Chapter 1496. Feng Nitian didn't touch Lin Yi, not because he was afraid of Lin Yi, but because he was afraid that Lin Yi would retaliate after he killed Yu Bing. He wouldn't know what to do then, and he wouldn't know what to do. If he did, he'd definitely offend Zhang Naipeo's side. This was Zhang Naipeo's grudge, and the disciples of the ancient level were all prideful. They wouldn't allow others to interfere with his grudge with others. If he didn't do anything, wouldn't he be waiting for Lin Yi to attack them? One could say that Feng Nitian had considered everything. He was one of the strong contenders for the head of House Feng, and he wasn't a reckless person. At this moment, Lin Yi and Yu Bing, who were in the room next door, heard the conversation clearly. Yu Bing hadn't slept yet, the test was tomorrow, and he was extremely nervous. He couldn't sleep well at this time, and when he heard the noise at the door, he woke up immediately, hearing that Yushan wanted to kill him. Yu Bing's face flashed with anger. He didn't think that Yushan would be this cruel. Lin Yi only wanted to cripple Yushan, but Yushan wanted to kill him. You heard that? You're kind, but your cousin isn't. Lin Yi said faintly as he saw the anger on Yu Bing's face. Fu. Yu Bing took a deep breath, as if he had made a big decision. You're right. There are some things that I can't change. Rather than living in fear of being killed by my cousin in the future, I might as well take care of it once and for all. Huh? Lin Yi smiled. You should have thought it through long ago. The night passed peacefully, and the next morning, at 5:30, Lin Yi came back to reality from the training space. He called Yu Bing and went to the washroom to wash up. Because Yu Bing had Lin Yi as his alarm clock, he didn't have to worry about being late for the test. After being woken up by Lin Yi, he quickly washed up and waited with Lin Yi for the people from the Ice Palace to arrive. It was only 6 o'clock, but the plaza in front of the inn was already filled with disciples who had come to participate in the trial. Everyone was waiting for the arrival of the Ice Palace's emissary. Even Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nitian didn't dare waste time as they waited with the others. At the peak of the ice mountain, where the Ice Palace was located. This is the name list and information of the participants. Please have a look, Palace Master. Little Qing presented the registration book to a woman in white. This white-robed lady was the Ice Palace mistress. She was the most authoritative figure in the Ice Palace. She took the book from Qing's hands and started flipping through it. She looked from the beginning to the end, looking at everyone's background in great detail. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed after that, but she still asked, Aunt Qing, is Yang Chi-Chi the only girl in this test? Yes, Palace Master. And she's also a physical practitioner. Qing nodded. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Master this time. The white-robed lady sighed softly. It's all my fault for not being able to comprehend the Ice Snow Mountain's heritage. Palace Master, you're already a sky-class late-phase peak at such a young age. You're already a rare genius. But the heritage of the Ice Snow Mountain has something to do with one's constitution as well, Qing consoled, looking at the other ancient sects and families. How many of them are as young as you are, Palace Master? But if we want to open the seal of the Heaven Stage Island, we must obtain the inheritance of ice from the Ice Spirit Mountain. The woman in white frowned. The Heaven Stage Conference is not far away. As one of the leaders of the Heaven Stage Conference, if we can't find the inheritor, the Heaven Stage Conference will lose its meaning. The other 3 houses don't have any news, right? It's not that easy to find an inheritor. Qing smiled bitterly. No news doesn't mean we haven't found one. To the ancient sects, the significance of an inheritor isn't just to open the island's seal. More importantly, it's a chance to break through the sky class and pursue the heavenly Tao. The white-robed lady said. So before the inheritor grows up, it won't be announced to the public. It's hard to avoid envious people causing trouble. That's true. Qing nodded. Palace Master, although you're not an inheritor, didn't you feel a part of the heritage as well? This can also be considered a fortuitous encounter. Only a small part. The white-robed lady smiled bitterly. Back then, before Master left, she hoped that I could obtain the heritage so that I could find her one day and meet her again. But now, if we can't open the island just because we haven't found an inheritor, then I'll be a sinner. How can I face her? Don't we still have some time? We can just take our time. There's no rush. If it really doesn't work, we can just do the test next year and relax the requirements. I don't believe that we can't find a suitable candidate, Ching suggested. That's the only way. But I'm still not satisfied. I need to see the participants myself. The white-robed lady said. That's fine. Let's go bring the participants to the ice mountain then. Ching knew that the sect master wouldn't be at ease until she saw the only girl, young Chi-Chi. At 6:30 sharp, just as the participants were wondering where the emissary from the ice palace was, two figures, one green and one white, appeared in the sky. The girl in green was Elder Ching from yesterday. She was Sky Class Mid-Phase, and the girl in white beside her was Sky Class Late-Phase Peak. Both of their Qinggong weren't weak. They appeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. In the midst of everyone's shock, Ching spoke first. This is the sect master of the Ice Palace. Sect master, please explain the rules and rewards of the test. This was supposed to be Ching's mission, but since the sect master of the Ice Palace was here herself, it was better for her to do the introductions. When Ching said that this girl in white was the sect master of the Ice Palace, everyone went into an uproar. Even Naipeo and Nitian were shocked. This confirmed their suspicions from yesterday. The sect master of the Ice Palace was a Sky Class Late-Phase Peak. Chapter 1497. Once one stepped into Sky Class, they would usually give up their position and go into isolation to pursue a higher level. They wouldn't be managing the family or the sect anymore, but this Ice Palace was different. Their sect master was Sky Class Late-Phase Peak. There were only two possibilities. One was that there were too many Sky Class Late-Phase Peak practitioners in the Ice Palace, and the other was that the current sect master was simply too young. Reaching Sky Class Late-Phase Peak at such a young age had caught the elders off guard, and they didn't even have time to pick the next sect master. One had to know that not just anyone could be a sect master. After all, they needed to be raised from a young age, and had to have the ability to manage the entire Ice Palace. Although he didn't know what the reason was, the Ice Palace master was very young. Not only was she young, but she was also very beautiful. Compared to little Ching, who looked to be in her late teens, her looks were very normal. The Ice Palace master, on the other hand, was just like her name and position, like an ice princess, elegant and refined. It was unforgettable to look at her. Of course, none of the participants dared to disrespect the sect master. She was a beauty, but they needed to be alive to admire her. They didn't even have the courage to look at a Sky Class Late-Phase Peak like this. Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised at the sect master's appearance. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't surprised because the sect master was a beauty, but because of her age. She really did look like she was around 19, no older than 25. This was different from Green. He could tell with certainty that the sect master didn't use a pill like that, but that she really was that old. Perhaps she'd broken through to Sky Class when she was 18 or 19 years old, and that was why she'd kept her face forever. Aunt Ching, you do the talking. I'm just here to take a look. The sect master's eyes stopped on Chi-Chi, the only female participant. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. This girl looked pretty cool and had a cold personality, but she wasn't the person she was looking for. Her body wasn't suited for the Ice Palace practitioner's arts, and so, after confirming that Chi-Chi couldn't do it, the sect master lost interest in staying. Aunt Ching? The cultivators present were in an uproar. Ching didn't look that old, but the sect master called her Aunt Ching. How old was the sect master? Could it be that she was really as young as she looked, only in her 20s? Lin Yi wasn't too shocked, as Lin Yi had already thought of this before, and the sect leader's Aunt Ching only confirmed Lin Yi's guess. Looking at the sect master, who was around the same age as him, and was already a sky-class late-phase peak, Lin Yi could only smile bitterly. There was no way he could compete with her. Compared to a normal noble house, his advantage was still very obvious. But in a hidden noble house, his training talent and golden fingers were basically equal to the support of the noble house. And in the ancient world, Lin Yi had no advantage at all. The ancient sects were not to be underestimated. No wonder his old man had said that the ancient sects were out of his control. It seemed like he'd have to rely on himself in the future. But Lin Yi wasn't discouraged. His overall strength was still a far cry from Lin Yi's, but judging from the speed of his training these past few months, only that monster Zhang Naipeo would be able to compete with him. Who else would dare say they'd leveled up in a few months? With that, the sect master turned and left. Qing knew the sect master's personality and didn't mind. The Ice Palace mistress had grown up in the Ice Palace and had become the personal disciple of the Grand Elder. She was going to be the next palace mistress, so her childhood was a lonely one. She had no friends or playmates, and all she had to do was train day and night. That was why her personality was so cold. Now, I'll announce the rules and rewards, Qing said as she looked at the crowd. Participants are not allowed to drive, and I will lead the group to the mountain on foot. You can bring spirit beasts along, but they can't be higher than Mystic Late Phase Peak, or you'll lose your right to participate. You can bring servants and followers, but they can't be higher than Golden Class. Servants and followers are not allowed to participate in the trial, nor are they allowed to fight, nor are they allowed to hurt the other party's servants or followers. You can attack the other party's spirit beasts, but you can't steal them. These rules had been in place for a long time, and the participants all nodded in understanding. Not many families had spirit beasts, and if they were too weak, they'd be a burden instead. As for servants and followers, these people wouldn't bring them. They weren't young masters or mistresses, and they'd need someone to wait on them when they came out. In fact, this rule was customized for the previous trial rules. If a trial taker was killed, the servants and attendants could also help to bring the corpse back. However, this method of bringing attendants was a little lacking in confidence and inauspicious, so this time no one brought them. Plus, the rules had been changed to not kill the opponent, and there was no need to bring servants and followers. If there are no objections, I'll talk about the rewards of the trial. In the trial, the top 3 with the most points will receive additional rewards from the Ice Palace. The rewards will be chosen from the elixirs and treasures collected in the trial, Qing said, and the top 10 with the most points will have the right to become an outer disciple of the Ice Palace, or the right to exchange for treasures. Does anyone have a problem with that? No. The crowd shook their heads. This was something mentioned in the invitation letter, and they didn't have too many objections to the rewards. Most of the people here were here for the outer disciple position. All right, pack your bags. We'll leave in an hour. Qing nodded. I'll wait for you here in an hour. Yes. The crowd nodded. They couldn't drive. Walking wasn't a problem for Lin Yi, but what about Xiao Xiao? The good thing was that this place was really cold. Even without the ice coffin, Xiao Xiao should be fine. But how were they going to bring her along? Chapter 1498. Fortunately, Lin Yi wasn't worried about the Ice Palace anymore. Since the Ice Palace said that he could bring Xiao Xiao along, then it didn't matter what his follower looked like, whether she was alive or dead, whether she walked on her own or carried on his back. She was his follower. This was Yu Bing's first time seeing Xiao Xiao, and seeing this beautiful and spirited girl lying in the ice coffin, Yu Bing's heart couldn't help but ache. No wonder Lin Yi would come all the way here just to find the medicine for her, even participating in the Ice Palace's test. This was a girl no weaker than his sister at this moment. Yu Bing realized just how fierce the competition around his sister was. You're really bringing her along? Yu Bing was a little shocked as he watched Lin Yi carry Xiao Xiao out of the Ice Palace. Yeah, that's for sure. Lin Yi nodded and took out some rope from the trunk, passing it to Yu Bing. Here, help me out. I'll carry Xiao Xiao. You help me tie her to my back. I Yu Bing wanted to say, "Are you crazy? How dangerous was this?" This test was already extremely dangerous. And now Linny was going to carry someone. Wouldn't this be an extra burden? Limiting his strength? But looking at Lin Yi's determined eyes, Yu Bing could only sigh and shake his head. "All right." Lin Yi squatted down and put Xiao Xiao on his back while Yu Bing helped secure Xiao Xiao onto Lin Yi's back. "All right. Thank you." Lin Yi stood up and jumped a couple of times, realizing that Yu Bing had tied him up really tightly. He nodded with a smile. "Hey, I really don't know what to say. You're bringing someone to the test. This is the first time I've heard of it." Yu Bing sighed, helplessly. "I don't have much luggage, just a few medicine on me. This is enough." "Then I won't go back to the inn." Lin Yi suddenly waved his hand towards the window of his room and said, "Skybolt Pig, come down." Gigi, a small white shadow, darted out of the window of Lin Yi's room and flew to Lin Yi's side. Profound rank spirit beast. Yu Bing jumped in fright. He'd been to Lin Yi's room many times, and he'd even slept there last night. How come he didn't notice that there was an ancient spirit beast in Lin Yi's room? But he doesn't have any offensive skills. He's just trash, Linny said, nodding. Gigi, after listening to Lin Yi's evaluation, the Skybolt Pig, suddenly felt wronged, but he didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction with him. He'd seen Lin Yi's miraculous in just a short amount of time. He'd already leveled up a few 100 years ago. Yu Bing nodded. He didn't think too much about it. From what he could see, this Skybolt Pig was probably the same as his sister's ancient spirit beast. It didn't have any offensive skills, but it had a body full of strength. Ancient spirit beasts were rare, but every hidden house had a few of them. So Lin Yi's pig wasn't that eye-catching. Every hidden house had at least a few ancient spirit beasts, but there were very few ancient spirit beasts that had offensive skills, so there weren't many disciples who brought ancient spirit beasts to the test. If they brought a normal ancient spirit beast, not only would it not be able to help, but they'd also have to take care of it. Wouldn't that be a burden? And so Linny roughly looked around. There were only 4 or 5 people who went back to the inn to bring out their ancient spirit beasts, and their spirit beasts were at most early phase mystic class, the same level as the pig. So Lin Yi wasn't worried that the pig would be at a disadvantage. One had to know that when spirit beasts fought humans, it didn't matter what level it was. But when spirit beasts fought against spirit beasts, it was based on level. As long as the spirit beasts didn't cause trouble, Lin Yi didn't have to worry too much about them. An hour passed quickly, and Qing appeared in the plaza in front of the inn again. The disciples who were participating in the test were all packed up and ready to go. The news of Lin Yi carrying someone to the test had already spread. All the practitioners thought that there was something wrong with Lin Yi's head. Carrying a dead person to the test? Even if he was infatuated, he wouldn't be this crazy, right? Master Pao, do you think this Ling ate too many retarded pills? Carrying a dead person to the test? Zhuang Niapeo looked at Lin Yi and said mockingly, "I think he's looking for death, isn't he? To go to hell with that damned girl of his?" Niapeo was surprised as well. He didn't know what Lin Yi was doing, but Niapeo was different from Zhuang Niapeo. His practitioner's arts were special, and he was more sensitive to external energy. He could feel that the girl on Lin Yi's back wasn't dead, but even if she wasn't, she was on the brink of death. With his understanding of Lin Yi, this guy wouldn't do something this stupid, would he? But he did it, and it was incomprehensible. Niapeo wanted to see who was on Lin Yi's back, but Xiao Xiao's face was on Lin Yi's shoulder, and her hair covered it. He couldn't see it clearly, and he gave up after a few glances. Who knows? Maybe she's here for a doctor? Niapeo shook his head. He couldn't think of any other reason for Lin Yi to bring a half-dead girl to the test. Most of the practitioners thought the same as Niapeo and Zhuang Niapeo. They didn't know why Lin Yi was doing this, but they all thought that Lin Yi was crazy. The rest were the people who didn't care what happened to them. What happened to Lin Yi had nothing to do with them. Yang Chi-Chi, for example, thought that Lin Yi was carrying a girl on his back. She didn't care what he was doing. Qing looked at all the participants, mainly checking the level of the spirit beasts they'd brought, seeing if any of them exceeded the rules of the Ice Palace. She paused when she saw the person on Lin Yi's back. But she didn't say anything. With her strength, she could feel Xiao Xiao's situation. She was on the brink of death. She didn't know why Lin Yi brought her to the test, but Lin Yi's actions didn't break the rules. Chapter 1499. As far as Qing was concerned, this woman was most likely Lin Yi's lover. She was about to die, and Lin Yi was coming to participate in the test. He was worried about leaving her alone at home, so he brought her along. It wasn't strange at all. Not bad. Looks like everyone's following the rules today. Qing looked at the people and the spirit beasts in their hands and nodded. The group couldn't help but smile bitterly. With the previous examples, who would dare do anything under the Ice Palace people's noses anymore? Wasn't that the same as asking for death? Follow me, everyone. On the way to the test, don't make any noise or fight. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. With that, Qing turned around and walked forward slowly. The group didn't dare delay, and quickly followed. At first, Yushan wanted to instigate Nitian to do something to Yu Bing along the way, but it seemed like he couldn't do that now. The Ice Palace had already given the order, and no one dared to go against it. In the beginning, the road was flat and easy to walk on. However, after entering the range of the snowy mountain, it became more difficult to walk. In addition to the snowy sky, visibility was very low. Everyone activated their own inner force and mental cultivation to maintain their vigilance. Qing had already said that fighting wasn't allowed on the way to the test, but who could guarantee that there wouldn't be any ambushes? In this kind of situation where visibility was very poor, wouldn't it be very unlucky if they were ambushed? They were all mystic practitioners, and once they channeled their practitioners' arts, their eyes and ears were much sharper. They were able to keep up with Qing's footsteps. In fact, Qing was already suppressing her speed on purpose. Otherwise, with her sky-class strength, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was flying. How are you? Are you all right? Yu Bing was a little worried for Lin Yi. After all, it was already hard for them to walk like this, and Lin Yi was still carrying weights. It was obvious that when Lin Yi walked, he kept his body facing the wind so that the snow wouldn't hit Xiao Xiao's face. This might not affect Xiao Xiao, but Lin Yi was doing it subconsciously. Nothing. Lin Yi smiled and said, "She's actually very light. Moreover, carrying her makes me more motivated." Ugh, I understand. Yu Bing looked at Lin Yi, then at Xiao Xiao's chest on Lin Yi's back, his face showing that he understood. Lin Yi was speechless as he looked at Yu Bing's perverted face. Was this guy thinking dirty? The motivation he was talking about was Xiao Xiao's illness. No matter how hard it was, he had to keep moving forward. What did it have to do with this? But with Yu Bing's reminder, Lin Yi realized that it was indeed quite comfortable. After walking for an hour, they finally arrived at the foot of the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, there was a group of Ice Palace disciples. They were all women in white, but they didn't look as young as the sect master and little Qing. Their appearances were also very ordinary, around 30 to 40 years old. Their white robes were different from the sect master's. The sect master's robe was a very elegant white gauze, while these disciples were all wearing white cotton robes looking very plain. What surprised him, however, was that all of these Ice Palace disciples were above Earth class. The strongest one was an Earth class late phase peak. Of course, there weren't any Sky class. Once they stepped into Sky class, they wouldn't just be normal disciples anymore. All right, this is the starting point of the test. After Qing stood still, she turned to the participants and said, "To be fair, there will be disciples of the Ice Palace who will send you to different locations on the mountain. The locations will be random. Now, you can all form your own teams, but each team can have more than 3 people. If there are more than 3, You'll need to split into 2 groups and meet up on the mountain. No one objected to what the Ice Palace was doing. If everyone were to be together, then they'd be thrown into chaos at the start of the test, losing the purpose of the test. But the restriction of 3 people disappointed a lot of them. They'd already contacted quite a lot of people before, thinking that there was strength in numbers. They wouldn't get bullied if they were together, but now that they were limited to 3 people, there was no point in finding more people. Although it was said that they could find their own rendezvous after reaching the top of the mountain, let's not talk about how easy it would be to find them. Even if they found them, the other party's group might not be able to merge with their own group. They might have already joined another group. Naipeo naturally formed a team with Zhuang Niapeo and Zhuang Niaoqiang. These 2 were the first to meet Naipeo, and they were the most familiar with him. The others couldn't compare. Nitian, on the other hand, formed a team with Yushan. As for Zhao Qikun, he could only form a team with Zhao Qijiu. There was no other choice. He couldn't let Qijiu be in his own team, could he? Lin Yi naturally formed a team with Yubing, but he had Xiao Xiao on his back. Even so, it wouldn't exceed the limit of 3 people. Very quickly, after everyone had split into groups, Qing gave the order, and all the Ice Palace disciples began to move. Each of them grabbed a participant and flew off in different directions of the mountain. Of course, the people in the same team naturally went in the same direction. The snow mountain was covered in white light, and the disciples were very familiar with the route, but the participants weren't. They were thrown in different directions, and they didn't even have a sense of direction. What do we do now? Yu, Bing, and Lin Yi were thrown in a place where there were no other participants. Yu Bing looked at the white snow and couldn't help but ask, "Search for the fire spirit's fruit while searching for treasures. That way, you'll be able to pass the test." Lin Yi said, "All right, I'll listen to you." Yu Bing and Lin Yi were together, and Lin Yi was the leader. He felt that compared to Lin Yi was much stronger than him. Yu Bing was considered one of the geniuses in Houseu, but compared to Lin Yi, he was nothing. Be it in terms of intelligence or strength, he was nothing. Skybolt Pig, where is the fire spirit's fruit? Can you sense it? Lin Yi turned to Skybolt Pig. Oink. Skybolt Pig shook his head. Chapter 1500. Oink oink. The Thunder Pig felt wronged, but he couldn't explain himself. In a moment of desperation, he used his paw to write a few words on the snow. "The snow mountain is too big. I can't sense it that far, but I can sense other treasures. If I look around, I might find the fire spirit's fruit." "Fuck. If you can write, why didn't you write earlier?" Lin Yi didn't think that Skybolt Pig could write. He got even angrier. "You can write? Why didn't you write before?" "GG. Skybolt Pig was even more wronged. I can't hold a pen, so I can only write on the snow." After he finished, he even showed Lin Yi his scissors. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "All right, then we'll go look for treasures first. You can sense where the fruit is on the way." "GG." The Skybolt Pig nodded in agreement. Lin Yi and Skybolt Pig's conversation made Yu Bing click his tongue in wonder. Even though he had seen many spiritual beasts, there were very few spiritual beasts that could understand human language and understand human language. Not to mention, not only could it understand human language, but it could also write. Yu Bing had never heard of such a thing before. This Lin Yi really could bring him surprises. It was as if all sorts of miraculous things weren't that miraculous when it came to him. "You pig, you can find treasures?" Yu Bing finally understood why Lin Yi brought a spirit beast that didn't seem to have any attack abilities to participate in the test. It had other abilities. The test grading was based on the number of treasures gathered, and with this little thing here, he wouldn't have to worry about not getting points. We'll be relying on him to find the fruit. Otherwise, where am I supposed to find it in this snowy mountain? Lin Yi nodded, but don't tell anyone about this. Don't worry, I'll keep it a secret. Yu Bing nodded solemnly. He knew the value of this Skybolt Pig. If its abilities were, as Lin Yi said, then it would be a priceless treasure. Even the ancient sects would drool over it, let alone the hidden houses. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't purposely wipe away the words the pig had written. The wind blew, and the words disappeared very quickly. The two of them followed behind the Skybolt pig and walked forward. Yang Chi-Chi was in a team by herself. She didn't know anyone and didn't want to team up with anyone. Other than the test, she was here to get the exchange rights for the Ice Palace's treasures. She heard that only the Ice Palace had that herb, and for her injured sisters, she had to find it. Otherwise, even a miracle doctor wouldn't be able to save them. It's an 8-leaf grass. Yang Chi-Chi didn't expect to see an 8-leaf grass growing on the snow not far from where she was standing. This was one of the more obvious elixirs, and while it wasn't that high in level, it was easy to spot. It was much easier to find than the ones hidden under the snow, and so Yang Chi-Chi excitedly took out her knife and carefully cut off the 8-leaf grass, putting it in her bag. Beep, beep. Yang Chi-Chi's card beeped twice, and she quickly took it out to see that the number had changed from 0 to 5. It seemed like the 8-leaf grass was worth 5 points. It wasn't much, but it was still a win. A good start is half the battle. A smile appeared on Yang Chi-Chi's cool face. Lil Sis Joe, this time, I'll definitely help you get that herbs. Yang Chi-Chi clenched her fists, and the determination returned to her face as she walked forward. It had to be said that Yang Chi-Chi was quite lucky. It didn't take long before she found another snow mushroom under an unknown tree. Looking at the color, it was at least 100 years old. Compared to the 8-leaf grass, this was a true practitioner's medicine. Even hidden houses didn't have many of them. Yang Chi-Chi looked left and right subconsciously, making sure that there was no one around before making her way over to the mushroom. Yang Chi-Chi was very excited. She had crammed a lot of knowledge on spirit herbs before coming to the test, and naturally, she knew how valuable it was. If the 8-leaf grass was worth 5 points, then a normal snow mushroom would be worth at least 100. And this one that was over 100 years old was even more valuable. Yang Chi-Chi didn't think that her luck would be this good. Wasn't this too smooth? But just as Yang Chi-Chi was about to cut the mushroom down, a white python suddenly shot out of a hole in the tree, pouncing at Yang Chi-Chi. Yang Chi-Chi jumped in fright, suddenly remembering that the information she'd crammed mentioned that near treasures that were older than a few decades old, there would be beasts that lived there. These beasts could feel the chi of the treasure, and living beside it would benefit them as well. This was what they call becoming spirits. Actually, becoming spirits was too much of a mythical. The real situation was that normal beasts were transforming into spirit beasts. When a beast absorbed enough chi, it would produce chi within its body, and it would slowly evolve into a spirit beast. It wasn't an ancient spirit beast that was born with it, but these evolved spirit beasts were usually stronger than ancient ones. Ancient spirit beasts were just the descendants of spirit beasts with a pure bloodline. They had some magical abilities, but they didn't necessarily have that much offensive power. Like the Skybolt pig, it only had the ability to find treasures, but it didn't have that much offensive power. General Weiwu, on the other hand, was obviously strong. It could punch and kick its enemies, and this was the power of an evolved spirit beast. But it was fortunate that Chi-Chi was an assassin and a physical practitioner of Qigong. Her reflexes were extremely fast, and she retreated subconsciously the moment the snake came charging at her, barely dodging the attack. The python didn't chase after Chi-Chi, only standing guard in front of the mushroom, not letting Chi-Chi get any closer. Evidently, it treated the snow mushroom as its private property, and no one else was allowed to touch it. Big Snake, let's discuss this. Can you give me the snow mushroom? I really need it. I need the Ice Palace's exchange rights. Yang Chi-Chi didn't have much confidence in winning against this giant snake, so she had to discuss first. Didn't the information say so? Some spirit beasts that were about to become spirits had their own spirituality and could understand human speech. PSSS- the python hissed at Yang Chi-Chi. full of hostility. Chapter 1501. But young Chi-Chi still took a step forward, trying to get closer to the snow mushroom. But before she could, the white python pounced at her with a swoosh. Chi-Chi knew that her negotiation had failed after seeing the python's action. It didn't matter if it understood her or not. It wouldn't let her get the mushroom so easily. Chi-Chi gritted her teeth, not knowing if she should give up or not. But looking at this snowy mountain, she knew that treasures weren't that easy to find. If she really gave up on this mushroom, who knew if she'd be able to find other treasures in the future? Moreover, even if they found it with the giant python guarding this place, there would probably be other spirit beasts guarding other places. I'll do it. Chi-Chi gritted her teeth and took out another poisoned dagger. She aimed it at the snake's head and plunged it in. If it were any other mystic, this python would be hard to deal with. But if two mystic masters worked together, it wouldn't be hard to take it down. After all, this python hadn't evolved into a true spirit beast. It wasn't even at golden class yet. It didn't even need two mystic masters. Just one mystic would be able to take it down. But while Chi-Chi had the strength of a mystic, her training was a mystic physical practitioner's qigong. She might be mystic, but she didn't have the attack power of a mystic. With a dull clang, Chi-Chi's dagger stabbed into the head of the python, but it only scratched the skin a little, leaving a superficial wound. It didn't do much to the python, but the snake seemed to have been stimulated by the pain. It opened its mouth wide and bit at Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi was fast, but her right hand was holding the dagger, and the dagger was near the snake's head. She didn't have time to pull it back, and the snake's teeth dug into her arm, forming a bone-deep wound. Blood flowed out in an instant. Chi-Chi was in pain, but she didn't let go of the dagger. She knew very well that if she lost the dagger, she wouldn't be able to beat the python unless she gave up and ran. She'd become a meal in its stomach. The enraged snake had bitten Chi-Chi's arm, but it didn't give up on attacking her. Chi-Chi's stab earlier had clearly made the snake hold a grudge, and it pounced on Chi-Chi again. Chi-Chi had no other choice. She could only bite down and swing the dagger again. Hit the snake where it hurts, but Chi-Chi didn't know where to start with this python. She could only randomly stab at the python's body, and after the pain, the python went even crazier. Not only did it want to bite Chi-Chi, it even swung its tail at her. The tail was huge, and Chi-Chi wanted to dodge it, but she couldn't do it in time. She fell to the ground. Chi-Chi was shocked. Her dagger was enough to kill people, but against a python, it was too small. It wasn't enough at all. Seeing the snake coming at her again, young Chi-Chi had no choice but to use her dagger to attack the snake, stabbing it again and again. But the snake bit down on her leg, tearing off a chunk of flesh. Ah! Chi-Chi was tearing up from the pain, but she gritted her teeth and held it in. She swung the dagger around, imagining the python as the person she hated the most. She stabbed it again and again. Linny, I'll stab you to death. I'll stab you to death. It was as if the poison on the dagger had taken effect after taking a bite out of Chi-Chi's flesh. It didn't even have time to swallow it before it fell to the ground, motionless. Full. The poison's finally working? Young Chi-Chi let out a long breath and patted her racing heart, mumbling to herself, "What a close shave I got with my life." No wonder even Uncle Tombstone said that the test was dangerous, that a snake almost ate me. But she'd still defeated the snake in the end, and Chi-Chi's lips curved into a relaxed smile. This snow Ganoderma should be worth quite a lot of points, right? As for the injuries, it was a bit more serious this time, but as an assassin, it was normal for Chi-Chi to get injured. She could take it. Chi-Chi got up from the ground, limping as she looked at her bloodied arms and legs. She didn't dare slow down and took out a small bottle from her pocket. This was the medicine Lin Yi had given her. Young Chi-Chi carefully opened the bottle and sprinkled the herbs on her legs and arms, not wanting to waste a single drop. "Man, there's not much left. I should ask for more. When I see that guy, Chi-Chi didn't have the slightest awareness of being ungrateful, as if she didn't even remember the time when she mistook the snake for Lin E and stabbed it with her dagger. After applying the herbs, Chi-Chi didn't dare waste any time. Who knew if her fight would attract the attention of others? And so Chi-Chi didn't rest as she limped over, ready to cut the snow Ganoderma. Not far from the mountain, there were two teams that seemed to have found the same herb at the same time. They were in a stalemate, ready to fight at any moment. But the strength of the two teams were about the same. One team had one mystic early phase, one late phase, and one mid phase. The other team, on the other hand, had two peak late phase masters and one mid phase master. And so, if these two teams were to fight, it would be hard to tell who would win. And so, in a situation like this, it was a battle of patience. But this scene was seen by Zhang Naipeo, Zhuang Niapeo, and Zhuang Niaoqiang. Master Pao, there's another group of fat sheep up ahead. Zhuang Niapeo pointed at the two teams excitedly. One couldn't blame him for being so excited. Their team didn't even need to worry about finding treasures. They just needed to find people. Without a second word, they just started robbing, and so it hadn't even been half a day since the test started, and he and Niaoqiang had already gotten 50 points each, and Naipeo himself had already gotten more than 100 points. And not bad. Go get them to hand over their points. Naipeo nodded, as if this was something natural. Chapter 1502. These two teams were in a standoff, and they didn't expect that someone else would come, and with such arrogance. But when they turned around and saw Zhang Naipeo, their faces were filled with helplessness and frustration. They knew what kind of person Zhang Naipeo was, and they couldn't help but feel regretful. They shouldn't have fought with him over a herb, and if one of them had given up, they wouldn't have met Zhang Naipeo. But now, not only was the stalk of spirit herb in front of him gone, the other spirit herbs in his hands would also become the spoils of war for others. You guys, what do you want? One of the teams asked, hoping that Zhang Naipeo and the others were just passing by, or that they had their eyes on the herb that didn't have an owner yet. That way, they would be able to escape. What do I want? Hand over your herbs, and I'll let you live. Otherwise, you know what happened to that Ling Yi, right? If you think that you can recover after your chi is sucked dry, then come try. Zhuang Niapeo humphed coldly. So, you guys want to snatch it? One of the teams said. The mystic late phase peak wasn't happy. He was the strongest here, even stronger than Zhang Naipeo, and naturally he didn't want to give up his loot. Snatch it? What a joke. You don't know the rules of the test yet, do you? The test allows you to snatch other people's herbs. Are you deaf? Or do you have a memory problem? Zhuang Niapeo said coldly. What, you don't want to shout it out? Smart. The mystic late phase peeked coldly and channeled his practitioner's arts, punching towards Zhang Naipeo, who wasn't far away. He yelled, "Capture the ringleader first, I'll fight Zhang Naipeo. You guys go together, and use this chance to cripple them. Otherwise, our loot will all go to others." From the perspective of this mystic late phase peak, no one would want to give their spoils of war to someone else for free. With him leading the way, everyone would definitely be united and attack together. But this mystic late phase peak trial taker had overestimated the guts of the others. As far as he was concerned, the worst case scenario was that the other team wouldn't make a move, but his own team would. After all, this involved everyone's interests. But after the mystic late phase peak warrior attacked, his two teammates didn't move at all, not to mention the opposing team member. His two teammates were formed at the last minute as well, and their relationship wasn't that strong. It was just a combination of benefits. Their thoughts were simple at this point, and that was that fighting Naipeo wasn't a rational thing to do. His wasp absorption arts could turn his opponent into a cripple, so who would take that risk? Plus, even if he did hurt Naipeo, would he really be fine? He had the ancient sect behind him. The everyday, an everyday sect. If they were targeted by something like that, not only would they not have a good life, even their families would be affected. And so, no one moved at this point. They were just waiting to watch the show. If the mystic late phase peak could beat Naipeo, then they'd be happy to sit back and watch. But if he couldn't, then what was the point of them making a move? They might as well just hand over the loot. Without the loot, they could always look for it again, and even if they couldn't find it, it didn't matter if they couldn't pass the test, but if they lost their strength and became a cripple, then they'd be done for. And so, the hot-blooded mystic late phase peak stupidly walked right into Naipeo's spear. Naipeo only raised his hand casually, taking the attack head-on and channeled his chrysanthemum wasp absorption arts, absorbing the chi from the mystic late phase peak into his own body. The mystic late phase peak was shocked. He'd only heard of it before, but now that he'd experienced it himself, he knew just how scary Naipeo was. Before, he knew how strong Naipeo was, but it was just a rumor as far as he was concerned. Even if Naipeo could absorb other people's strength, as long as he stopped channeling his arts, how would he absorb it? Plus, he'd seen that Ling Yi, he didn't lose his strength at all. In fact, he'd broken it. And so, he thought that Naipeo's arts were just rumors, that he wasn't that strong. But now, he realized that he was wrong. Very, very wrong. He stopped channeling his arts, but the chi in his body was still flowing into Naipeo's body, uncontrollably. Moreover, he couldn't move his fist away, even if he wanted to. Only now did he realize that the rumors were true. There was no falsehood at all. While he was regretting it, he was also a little pissed off that his partner didn't make a move. What are you guys doing? Hurry up and make a move. My chi is about to be sucked dry. The mystic late phase peak participant yelled in shock and anger. The other team members looked at each other. No one dared to make a move. What a joke. That mystic late phase peak wasn't even a match for Naipeo. What right did they have to make a move? What? You guys want to make a move too? Come at me. I'll suck every single one of them. Naipeo cackled coldly. Impossible. I don't believe that. How many hands do you have? Can you suck every single one of them? The mystic late phase peak seemed to want to prove that Naipeo was lying as he swung his left fist and right leg at the same time. But the next moment, his left fist and right leg were all sucked into Naipeo's body. He couldn't pull them out. And now, the chi in his body was draining even faster. At this moment, the other team members who saw this miraculous scene did not dare to act rashly. We're willing to give all our spoils to Master Pao. The weakest mystic early phase was scared out of his wits as he quickly took out all the treasures he'd collected and put them on the ground. In order to show that he'd taken everything, he even took out his points card, letting the others see the number on it. What about you guys? Zhuang Niapeo nodded, satisfied. Kid, at least you know your place. Chapter 1503. Ha ha. On the other side, Naipeo was laughing maniacally as he pushed away the practitioner who used to be a mystic late phase peak. He was no longer a practitioner, but a normal person. Thank you so much, you made me touch the barrier of mystic late phase peak. I just broke through, and now I'm about to break through again. Ha ha! After all, the chi he took from other people's bodies had to go through another transformation before it could be used by Naipeo. But because the energy was different, there would be some loss after the transformation, and depending on the purity of the opponent's energy, the loss would be different as well. The chi he absorbed from Lin Yi's place was extremely pure, allowing him to break through from mystic mid-phase peak to mystic late phase. But this mystic late phase peak practitioner's chi wasn't very pure, and so even though he was stronger than Lin Yi, the efficiency of converting it into his own chi wasn't high. It only gave him a slight benefit. As for him breaking through again, it was just a bluff to scare people off. The mystic late phase peak was pushed by Naipeo, and he fell to the ground. A trace of regret flashed across his eyes, but it was too late for regrets now. After collecting the spoils, Naipeo left with the brothers Niapeo and Niao Qiang. These people had lost their value, and he needed to find other teams to take their spoils. I'm sorry, we couldn't do anything at that time. After Naipeo left, the mystic early phase peak who was in the same team as the crippled late phase peak said apologetically to him, I saw Naipeo fight Ling Yi with my own eyes, and I knew we weren't his match. I wanted to stop you, but it was too late. Forget it. I was too impulsive and underestimated Naipeo's strength with my mystic late phase peak strength. I can't blame anyone else. The crippled late phase peak smiled bitterly. He couldn't blame anyone else, and he could only blame himself for being too impulsive. Let's go, we'll continue to search for heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Don't worry, as long as we have it, we'll bring out your share. Everyone was somewhat apologetic about what had happened before. Now that these two teams were penniless, there was no reason for them to continue fighting. It was better to unite and search for elixirs together. Yang Chi-Chi carefully cut the mushroom off, and the moment she put it in her bag, her card beeped twice, and the numbers on it started increasing. In the blink of an eye, it broke through 100, 200, 300, and it still didn't stop. Chi-Chi's eyes were wide open. She didn't think that she'd hit the jackpot this time, picking up a treasure. This snow Ganoderma wasn't just 100 years old. 500, 600, 1,000, 1,000, and 500. Finally, the number on the card stopped at 1,005. In other words, this snow mushroom had given Chi-Chi a full 1,000 points. That was 1,000 points. How many ordinary heavenly treasures would be needed to accumulate that many points? The 8-leaf grass was only worth 5 points. Plus, it had only been half a day. This filled Chi-Chi with confidence. She believed that as long as her luck wasn't too bad, and she could find some ordinary treasures, passing the Ice Palace test wouldn't be a problem at all. This is great. Chi-Chi felt that the wounds on her arms and legs weren't hurting as much anymore. She was full of fighting spirit. Girl, what's so great? A cold, mocking voice came from behind Chi-Chi. Who's there? Chi-Chi turned around subconsciously and saw the three people she didn't want to see the most, Niapeo, and Naipeo, on the way to Snowfrost Town. This Niapeo had even teased her, and Chi-Chi had a very bad impression of him. If it weren't for the fact that she wasn't as strong as them, Chi-Chi would have killed them already. It's you, Gunslinger, of course, and you, Master Pao. Niapeo added as he remembered that Naipeo was here. What are you guys doing? Chi-Chi asked subconsciously. Girl, aren't you acting all high and mighty? Didn't you ignore us? I'll let you know the price of looking down on us. Niapeo laughed coldly. This place is my world. I'll play you to death. But just as he said that, Niapeo realized that Chi-Chi was covered in blood, on her body, on her legs. It was scary. He couldn't help but curse inwardly. He'd been planning on messing with Chi-Chi during the test, but seeing her in such a pitiful state, he lost interest all of a sudden. Who would want to play with a bloody person? Fuck, what's wrong with you? You're covered in blood. Niapeo said, unhappily. It's none of your business. Chi-Chi looked at the three cautiously. You're lucky. Hand over all your loot, and I'll let you go. I won't kill you. Zhuang Niapeo waved his hand impatiently. Why should I? Chi-Chi subconsciously tightened her grip on her backpack. She worked so hard to get this. How could she give it up so easily? That was impossible. Why should I? Hand it over if you don't want to die. Niapeo shouted. Dream on. Chi-Chi yelled as she channeled her qigong and turned around, wanting to run away from this place. But young Chi-Chi had forgotten that her leg was already injured, and her lightness kung fu had been severely affected. She didn't even make it a few steps before she almost fell to the ground from the pain. But while her starting speed wasn't slow, there was someone who was faster. In the blink of an eye, Naipeo was standing not far from Chi-Chi, his speed shocking. This was the first time Naipeo had used any other aspect of his strength other than his wasp absorption arts. He didn't only know the wasp absorption arts, there were other arts in the chrysanthemum arts, but Naipeo didn't use them under normal circumstances. The other arts weren't as practical as the wasp absorption arts. The wasp absorption arts could turn other people's strength into his own, and to Naipeo it was like a golden finger. Chapter 1504. After all, his comfy was just too creepy. If he were to absorb anyone he met, how were they supposed to live? And so, in order to avoid being surrounded, Naipeo only used the wasp absorption arts on his enemies. He wouldn't use it on anyone else. Young Chi-Chi, for example, was only running away and not attacking. Naipeo wouldn't use the wasp absorption arts on her. It was like a cheat, and people would get jealous if he used it too much. Naipeo could be considered invincible in the Mystic class, but what about Earth class? If he was at the early phase of Earth class, he could risk getting injured to use the wasp absorption divine art. But if he was at the peak of the early phase of Earth class, he couldn't do it. He was arrogant, but not arrogant. Besides, leveling up wasn't his main goal. His main goal was to break through the first stage of the chrysanthemum arts and enter the second stage. This was why he was participating in the test. He was looking for an opportunity to break through. Naipeo, on the other hand, didn't really care about strength growth. As long as he trained the second stage of the chrysanthemum arts, his strength would naturally increase. He was at the first stage of the chrysanthemum arts now, only one step away from the second. But he couldn't open the jade box for the second stage. Naipeo might be at the first stage, but he still couldn't open the box for the second stage. He still couldn't understand it. He remembered that when he first opened the jade box containing the first level of the cultivation method, he didn't have to spend much effort at all. But now, even after using all of his strength, he was still unable to open the jade box on the second layer. Trying to run away from me, Naipeo? Who do you think you are? Naipeo looked at Chi-Chi coldly. I'm a person who doesn't want to fight with girls. Hand over your treasures, and I'll let you go. Don't force my hand. No. Chi-Chi bit her lips, cursing Naipeo for being a robber. How could this guy be so evil? Instead of searching for treasures of heaven and earth, he went to rob others' things. But if it were any other situation, young Chi-Chi could always run away if she couldn't win. Her family's qigong was no joke, after all. It was the result of generations of research and practice. But now, she was seriously injured and couldn't run fast at all, not to mention fighting with others. Humph! Naipeo humphed coldly and floated to Chi-Chi's side. With a wave of his hand, Chi-Chi's bag of treasures fell into Naipeo's hands. Since you're a girl, I won't turn you into a cripple. Give it back. Chi-Chi was in despair. She wanted her treasure back, but how was she a match for Naipeo? At this point, Naipeo was already far away, standing at his original position. Master Pao is indeed powerful. Not only does he have divine skills to protect his body, but his lightest skill is also amazing. Zhuang Niapeo praised. He didn't know that Naipeo had other skills other than the wasp absorption arts, but now that he saw it, he realized that the people of the ancient sects were not to be underestimated. If one thought that Naipeo only knew the wasp absorption arts and nothing else, then they would be sorely mistaken. Yeah, once Master Pao makes a move, it'll be as easy as pie. Zhuang Niapeo said as well. It's all right. Naipeo said faintly. He looked at Chi-Chi's bag and took out the treasures. He wasn't interested in the other women's stuff. He had no interest in the things that men and women used. He was a transcendent being. Only 2 heaven and earth treasures? You're poor enough. Naipeo frowned. He didn't expect Chi-Chi to only have 2 treasures in her bag. It was too little. Chi-Chi was troubled. You think it's too little? You don't want it? Give it back. Humph. Chi-Chi humphed coldly. The next moment, Naipeo put the two treasures into his bag, and he let out a surprised gasp. His electronic card had suddenly increased by 1,000 points. Before this, he only had 300 points, and that was after robbing a few teams of their own. 1,000 points? What the hell are these two things? Naipeo didn't really look at Chi-Chi's treasures before, only throwing them into his pouch casually. But now, he quickly took them out, and his eyes landed on the snow Ganoderma. He couldn't help but be surprised. A 500-year-old snow lingxi? You're really a rich little lady. You can even find such a heaven-defying treasure of heaven and earth? I've underestimated you. But thank you so much. 1,000 points. It looks like I'm going to get first place this time. Congratulations, Master Pao. Congratulations, Master Pao. You're a lucky man. Zhuang Niapeo and Zhuang Niaoqiang congratulated him. Envious. But since this was Naipeo's, they didn't dare ask for it. Haha, you guys don't have to worry. You can have all the treasures we get in the future. I've got more than enough. Naipeo laughed and turned to Chi-Chi. Thank you so much, girl. Chi-Chi was so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. Her tears couldn't help but flow down her face as she listened to Naipeo and the others' proud words. This was the snow lingxi that she had worked so hard for, fighting the python, and it was taken away by these villains just like that. They really were evil. The more she thought about it, the sadder and sadder she felt. She already had the right to trade, but now she had to start all over again. But with her injuries like this, could she still get any other treasures? Normal ones were fine, but what about the treasures guarded by wild beasts? It was definitely impossible to obtain it. You're saying that there's a 500-year snow lingxi up ahead? Are you for real? Even someone like Lin Yi, who had seen a lot of treasures, was shocked by this news from Skybolt Pig. 500-year-old snow lingxi might not be of much use to Xiao Xiao, but it was still a legendary treasure. Zhang Liju's refiner's notes had mentioned that it was one of the ingredients used to make many 4th and 5th level elixirs. It was a priceless treasure. Chapter 1505. Soulmate GG. Skybolt Pig nodded with certainty, implying that there was no need to doubt his instincts. 500-year-old snow mushroom. If we get it, we'll get at least 500 points. Yu Bing said with some envy and shock. This one treasure is enough to pass the Ice Palace test. Ha! If that's the case, then you can have all the treasures we found earlier. I only need this one. Linny smiled and said to Yu Bing, Really? Thank you so much. Yu Bing said, excited Lin Yi was really lucky. Originally, it was all thanks to Skybolt Pig that they found all these treasures. And even if Lin Yi didn't give it to him, Yu Bing wouldn't say anything. But now Lin Yi was giving all the treasures he found earlier to him. Didn't that mean that he would have a lot of points? One had to know that the treasures they found earlier added up to 4 to 500 points, according to Yu Bing's estimation. 4 to 500 points should be enough to get into the top 10. The heaven and earth treasures that the Sky Thunder Pig found were all worth more than 50 points. As for those heaven and earth treasures that were worth 5 or 10 points, it would ignore them and pretend not to see them. Therefore, this was also the reason why they found so many heaven and earth treasures with high points in half a day. In this period of time, Lin Yi and Yu Bing had met a few other teams, but these people all stayed away from Lin Yi and Yu Bing. They didn't seem to have any intentions of stealing from them, although many people saw Lin Yi getting stepped on by Zhang Naipeo. They also saw how Lin Yi recovered his strength in one night and broke through to Mystic Late Phase. These people saw with their own eyes that Lin Yi was a weird person, and no one would try to cause trouble for him. They knew that they weren't Zhang Naipeo, and they had no confidence in dealing with a weirdo like him, and so they saved a lot of trouble along the way. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was a person who wouldn't touch others if they didn't mess with him. He didn't really care about the others. Gee. All of a sudden, Skyball Pig stopped beside a huge tree, and his face was filled with disappointment and helplessness. What's wrong? Linny frowned. You didn't find the snow mushroom? There's a python here. Looks like it was killed not long ago. Yubing pointed at the tree. Linny looked over and saw a dead white python. At this moment, half of the python's body was covered in snow. Because it was also white, if one didn't look carefully, they would have missed it. As for the Skyball Pig, it ran to the side of the towering tree and used its front paws to dig at the snow. After a while, the snow on the roots of the tree was removed. The disappointment on the Skyball Pig's face became even stronger. Oink oink. Skyball Pig pointed at the place he dug with his front paw. Linny heard Skyball Pig's call and looked over. He saw that where Skyball Pig was pointing, there was the root of a snow mushroom that had just been dug out. In other words, this snow mushroom had just been dug out. Dug out? Linny asked. From the looks of it, it should have been dug out not long ago. Seems like that's the case. Yubing walked over as well and said regretfully after seeing the situation on top of the tree roots, I wonder who dug it out. How could they be so lucky? Linny smiled bitterly and said, forget it, we already have enough heaven-defying cheating devices. We don't need one more snow Ganoderma. Let's continue looking for other treasures. That's true. Yubing nodded. Let's go, little fella. Let's go find the next treasure. Linny said to Skyball Pig. Gee. Skyball Pig didn't want to give up. He pointed at a direction not far away, as if telling the person who dug out the snow mushroom to go in that direction. Linny paused, but understood immediately. Skyball Pig should still be able to sense the existence of the snow mushroom. He didn't lose his sense just because the snow mushroom was dug out. Looking in the direction Skyball Pig was pointing, Linny paused. Linny saw a black shadow not far away. It should be a person, and there were red bloodstains on him. He seemed to be injured. There's a person over there. Linny asked curiously. It seems like it's really a person? Yubing saw the black shadow not far away. Let's go take a look. Let's not mind our own business. Linny wasn't someone who liked to meddle in other people's business. Whether the participant was injured or not didn't matter to him. Let's take a look first. Maybe it's someone we know? Yubing suggested. All right, let's go take a look then. Linny nodded. The two walked towards the black shadow as they talked. When they got closer, Linny didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw the face of the black shadow. Isn't it your girlfriend? Yubing teased. Confidant? More like chasing after the soul. Linny couldn't help but smile bitterly. The injured person on the snow was Yang Chi-Chi. At this moment, Yang Chi-Chi was sitting on the snow, angrily wiping her tears. It wasn't because she was in pain, but because she couldn't stand the fact that her hard-earned loot was taken away by a villain. Her plan to pass the Ice Palace test was basically ruined. Although that was what Linny said, Linny couldn't just ignore it. After all, he'd saved Chi-Chi twice already, and now that he saw it, Linny had to help. During the strength test, he announced that Chi-Chi was a freelancer, and this made Linny feel like they were in the same boat. Since they were both freelancers, without the support of a big sect, Linny would naturally help if he could. What's wrong? Did someone hurt you? Sitting on the ground and crying? Linny walked over and smiled at Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi was so focused on getting angry that she didn't even notice that someone had gotten close. In fact, if Linny didn't want her to notice, she wouldn't have noticed at all. Why are you here? Laughing at me? Chi-Chi saw that it was Linny. Her face was pale from the blood loss, and a trace of despair flashed across her face. Why did this guy have to be her unlucky self every time she was in trouble? Chapter 1506. Chapter 1504. You're as bad as they're both. Chi-Chi nodded, a little troubled that Lin Yi had hit the nail on the head. Both? You were the one who found the snow herb? Lin Yi blinked. It was me, but Zhang Naipeo, and those bastards took it away. Chi-Chi said angrily, if I hadn't gotten hurt fighting the snake, they wouldn't have gotten it. Come on, if it weren't for your injuries, you'd probably die a worse death fighting Zhang Naipeo. Lin Yi teased. Humph. Chi-Chi humphed but didn't deny it. Naipeo was strong, and she knew that she wasn't his match. I didn't want to get involved in this at first, but since it was Zhang Naipeo who took it, I don't mind getting it back. Lin Yi heard that it was Naipeo who took the herb, and he started thinking about stealing it. Really? Chi-Chi's eyes lit up. Really? But I won't give it back to you. Whoever gets it first. Lin Yi naturally wasn't planning on giving it back to Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi couldn't hold back her tears anymore after hearing Lin Yi's overbearing words. She'd been wronged enough already. And Lin Yi had finally given her some hope, letting her see the light at the end of the tunnel. But in the blink of an eye, Lin Yi had become a robber. He didn't give the herb back to her. Instead, taking it for himself, this made young Chi-Chi even sadder. Thinking about Lil Nine's sickness, young Chi-Chi felt even worse. She was so close to getting the right to exchange, but it was gone just like that. You're as bad as them. Chi-Chi glared at Lin Yi, tears falling down her cheeks, as if Lin Yi had stolen something from her. I wanted the exchange right to cure my good sister, but now, Chi-Chi didn't even cry when she was hurt, but now she was crying. Although Lin Yi was a cold person, he was a bit soft-hearted. He couldn't ignore the people he knew. He thought about how this cool girl didn't cry even when she was heavily injured, but now she was crying because a heavenly treasure was stolen. In that case, the exchange right was really important to her. All right, don't cry. I'll snatch it back later and return it to you, but we want the other things. Lin Yi said helplessly, you're a physical cultivator, right? I'll need your help later. If you want the snow lingji, you have to put in some effort. Really? Chi-Chi was overjoyed at Lin Yi's words. She nodded quickly. Yes, I'll do my best. Definitely. Lin Yi smiled. All right, let's heal your wounds first, and then we'll go find Zhang Naipeo for revenge. Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to go after Naipeo. He had the Skybolt pig, and he'd be able to find out where the snow lingji was. As long as the snow lingji was on Naipeo, he'd be able to find him. Even without Chi-Chi, Lin Yi would have gone after Naipeo. He'd suffered a loss before, and although he'd managed to break through, Lin Yi wasn't the type to let things slide. It wouldn't be in Lin Yi's character to let things slide. Heal? Now. Chi-Chi paused. I've already used the medicine you gave me. Yu Bing stood on the side, finding it funny. These two were like happy enemies. Lin Yi said he wasn't going to help, but he still did, and even gave the snow lingji back to this cool girl. But Yu Bing didn't complain. After all, Lin Yi was the one who took the snow lingji back. Lin Yi was free to give it back to Chi-Chi if he wanted to. The medicine won't heal any time soon. If you want to stand up and fight now, then stop talking. Lin Yi said, Oh, then, do I still need to take off my clothes? Chi-Chi remembered that her shoulder and leg were injured as well. Was Lin Yi going to take off her clothes again? No need. Lin Yi didn't say much and squatted down next to Chi-Chi. Because of Xiao Xiao behind him, Lin Yi couldn't sit down. After that, Lin Yi grabbed Chi-Chi's hand and locked her meridians. He threw away the bandages and medicine and quickly channeled the art of dragon mastery into the jade space. Chi-Chi was startled. She didn't want to be held by a man like Lin Yi. But seeing that Lin Yi was only checking her meridians and didn't do anything else, she let him. But in the next moment, Chi-Chi felt a warm flow from Lin Yi's hand into her meridians. Her wound started to feel warm, making Chi-Chi very comfortable. She couldn't help but let out a moan. But after the moan, Chi-Chi blushed a little. That moan really did sound like some kind of sound, and in front of Lin Yi, she felt very embarrassed. A playful smile appeared on Yu Bing's lips, but when he saw the serious look on Lin Yi's face, Yu Bing realized that he was wrong. Lin Yi didn't seem to be doing anything dirty at all. Chi-Chi also saw that Lin Yi didn't seem to care about her at all, and she let out a breath of relief. Ha! Chi-Chi suddenly realized that the wounds on her shoulder and arm were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chi-Chi was shocked. How was this possible? The scene in front of her was beyond her imagination. She had never seen a wound that could heal like this. Chi-Chi's question attracted Yu Bing's attention as well. Originally, Yu Bing didn't want to see Lin Yi heal Chi-Chi because he was afraid of seeing something he shouldn't see. But now that he turned around subconsciously, he saw the miraculous scene on Chi-Chi's wound. He couldn't help but exclaim, how is this possible? Even Hao's son doesn't have this kind of ability, does he? When Yu Bing's swollen face was healed by Lin Yi, he was already surprised enough, but he wasn't as surprised as he was right now. Treating swollen wounds was different from treating wounds. Swollen wounds could be treated with pure qi, but there was a lot of flesh on the wounds. How could they be healed so quickly? Very quickly, the wounds on Chi-Chi's shoulder and arm were completely healed, and there was white skin growing on her arm. It's done? Chi-Chi couldn't believe her eyes. You healed my arm, just like that. Don't talk, there's still your leg, Lin Yi said faintly. Chapter 1507. Did you do it on purpose? It didn't take long for Chi-Chi's leg injury to heal as well. It's done. Lin Yi stood up. It's done? It's really done? Chi-Chi looked at her leg and arm in disbelief. Lin Yi, I really don't know what to say. You can even heal an injury like this so quickly. Yu Bing looked at Chi-Chi's flawless arm in shock. Don't look at indecent things. If you want to be chased by her, then keep looking, Lin Yi reminded Yu Bing. Yu Bing jumped in fright and quickly turned his head around. In actuality, Chi-Chi's injuries were only on her arm and calf. As for her shoulder, Lin Yi didn't purposely take away the medicine that she used to bandage it. It didn't really matter. So, even if Yu Bing saw her arm and calf, it didn't matter. Right, you could heal me like this. Why did you take off my clothes last time? Were you trying to be a pervert? Chi-Chi suddenly remembered that Lin Yi took off her clothes when he healed her last time. He didn't even need to take off her clothes to heal her, so he must have done it on purpose? Looking at the angry Chi-Chi, Lin Yi didn't know what to say. He was healing her, and now she was in trouble? I didn't know how to heal like this last time, Lin Yi said faintly, and this method uses a lot of qi. You're a typical ungrateful person, aren't you? I healed you, and you're questioning me instead of thanking me? Chi-Chi was embarrassed, but she understood what Lin Yi was saying. She was a physical practitioner, but she knew the importance of qi. And so, Chi-Chi said unwillingly, this time, thanks, but I can't just let it go like this when you saw me naked last time. Do whatever you want. Lin Yi didn't want to talk to her anymore. It wasn't the first or second time Chi-Chi said something like this. Yu Bing was laughing on the side, thinking that the conversation between these two was quite amusing. Right? Who's that on your back? Chi-Chi had been curious about why Lin Yi was carrying someone on his back to participate in the test. My girlfriend is sick. She needs a type of elixir to cure her illness. Lin Yi didn't hide anything. My goal is similar to yours. We are both looking for elixirs to treat other people's illnesses. Oh, Chi-Chi looked at Xiao Xiao behind Lin Yi and nodded. This guy was quite good to his girlfriend. He actually carried her behind his back to participate in the trial. Didn't he find it troublesome? Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about Zhang Naipeo. Lin, he said, I've thought of a few countermeasures, one of which is to use a physical practitioner against him. His practitioner's arts can absorb spiritual practitioner's strength for his own use, so it's almost impossible for spiritual practitioners to fight him head-on, but it's different for physical practitioners. Physical practitioners don't have qi in their bodies, and he can't absorb it. When the time comes, we can use physical practitioners to attack him, and maybe we'll get an unexpected result. You're saying you want me to attack Zhang Naipeo? Chi-Chi asked. Yes, I'll attract his attention, and you attack him from behind. Lin Yi nodded. All right. Chi-Chi didn't say much. She hated Zhang Naipeo to the bone, so there was no way she would let go of a chance to deal with him herself. Then what do I need to do? Yu Bing asked. You just need to keep the Zhuang brothers occupied. Don't let them cause trouble in the middle. Lin Yi said, All right, no problem. Yu Bing didn't dare fight Zhang Naipeo, but he had some confidence in dealing with Nia Peo and Niao Qiang. Little guy, let's go, bring us to the snow Ganoderma, Lin Yi said to Skybolt Pig after arranging everything. Oink oink. Skybolt Pig nodded and started running. He didn't want to give up anymore. After all, the snow Ganoderma he'd been looking for was taken away by someone else. How could he just give up like that? Zhang Naipeo, Zhuang Niapeo, and Zhuang Niaoqiang were walking and stopping other than collecting some treasures themselves. They were waiting for other teams to come and steal from them. At this moment, Zhang Naipeo had just stolen another team's treasures and was splitting the spoils with the Zhuang brothers. Getting something for nothing, doesn't it feel good? After walking for a while, Lin Yi saw Zhang Naipeo and the other two. They had just stolen something from another team, and so Lin Yi couldn't help but mock them. Who did I think it was? Isn't this the school's boss, Lin? What's wrong? You have too much strength and you want to give me some? Zhang Naipeo turned around and saw Lin Yi. He paused and started laughing. He didn't know why Lin Yi was here, but as far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was going to give him strength again. No matter what tricks Lin Yi had up his sleeves, it was useless. The wasp absorption arts was omnipotent. Stealing from others feels good, doesn't it? But the feeling of being robbed isn't bad either. Lin Yi walked towards Naipeo and said calmly, You mean you want to have a taste of being robbed? Naipeo understood what Lin Yi was saying, but as far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was just bluffing. He pretended like he didn't understand and asked back, Then come, I'll let you have a taste of being robbed. Do it. With that, Lin Yi moved first, sending a palm towards Naipeo. Naipeo laughed as he looked at Lin Yi as if he was looking at an idiot. He reached out his hand towards Lin Yi. Some people just don't have a good memory. After getting sucked once, you still want to come to me? I really don't understand. Is there really such an idiot in this world? Yu Bing and Chi-Chi moved at the same time Lin Yi spoke. Chi-Chi was an expert in assassination, and her Qinggong had recovered as well. In an instant, she moved behind Naipeo. Naipeo was surprised. He had channeled the chrysanthemum wasp absorption arts, but he didn't get any qi from Lin Yi's hand. In the next moment, he understood that Lin Yi did not use the incantation, and the palm that he struck out did not carry a shred of pure qi. Chapter 1508. I'm tricking you, you idiot. This is your fourth plan, isn't it? You want to use this to attack me? But I'm sorry, my wasp absorption arts is just a passive art from the chrysanthemum arts, a passive skill. Now, have you realized that you can't stop anymore? What? It's a passive skill. Lin Yi's face changed. Ha ha ha, you just realized? It's too late. Just wait for you to become a cripple again. Naipeo's eyes were filled with disdain towards Lin Yi. Master Pao's divine arts protect you. Master Pao is mighty. Zhuang Niapeo and Zhuang Niaoqiang saw that Lin Yi had become Naipeo's sacrificial pawn once again, and they started cheering. Yu Bing and Chi-Chi, on the other hand, had a look of deep worry in their eyes. But in a situation like this, they couldn't do anything. Naipeo was practically invincible. How could they do anything? And so they could only put their hopes on Lin Yi, hoping for a miracle. Oh, Lin Yi nodded faintly. Actually, I forgot to tell you that the first 4 plans were just for you to play with. The 5th plan is the one I'm really planning to use. The fifth plan? You think you can still use the fifth plan? Do you still have the ability to use the fifth plan? Naipeo paused and said with disdain, You're about to have your chi sucked dry. How are you going to use the fifth plan? I'm using it right now. Linny said with a straight face. I'm using it. Naipeo's face changed all of a sudden. Wah. Suck it? Why don't you keep sucking? Why did you stop? Lin Yi easily pulled his hand back from Naipeo's palm. Naipeo had stopped sucking Lin Yi's chi. What did you do to the chi? All of a sudden, Naipeo's face turned red, and his body started to inflate like a balloon. In the next moment, before he could even finish a sentence, his entire body let out a deafening, earth-shattering sound. Boom. Naipeo exploded. Of course, this explosion didn't come from Naipeo's entire body, but from his inside. There was a huge explosion inside his body. Pfft, dash. Naipeo spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale as he fell to the ground, unable to move. Didn't you enjoy sucking it? Continue. I still have a lot of true chi. Do you want it or not? Linny said coldly as he looked at Naipeo. This sudden turn of events caused everyone present to be dumbfounded. Just now, when Lin Yi and Naipeo were fighting, they had attracted the attention of the other teams, but they didn't know what was going on. From what they saw, Naipeo, who had the upper hand, suddenly exploded and fell to the ground, spitting out blood. Could it be that he'd absorbed too much energy and exploded? My meridians, all broken. Naipeo couldn't believe it, but the truth was right in front of him. He didn't know what Lin Yi did, but the chi he absorbed from Lin Yi seemed to have expanded countless times over. It was just a small ball of chi, but it made his meridians explode. His wasp absorption arts didn't even have time to convert it before tragedy struck. But this was the chi of an Earth-class early phase. Lin Yi was just a mystic late phase. How could he do this? Oh, you're the main character. You can fix it even if it's broken. Lin Yi said casually. You came out with a halo and a golden finger. It'll be fine. Lin Yi, just you wait. The day after day sect won't let you get away with this. My master won't let you get away with this. Naipeo said furiously. Oh, when did you guys decide to let me go? If it weren't for you, it'd be me, wouldn't it? Lin Yi shrugged as he asked in return. Humph. Naipeo had no hope left. He needed to get back to the sect as soon as he could. His meridians were all broken, and he needed to think of a way. The 4 plans Lin Yi had used before were just a stall for time, and talking to Naipeo for so long was just a stall for time. After all, Lin Yi had been compressing the chi bomb in his body. It wasn't until Lin Yi was done that Lin Yi activated the art of dragon mastery, letting Naipeo absorb his chi. And so, it didn't take long for Naipeo to absorb Lin Yi's chi bomb. Of course, Lin Yi's chi bomb had been carefully compressed as well. If he'd used his full strength, Naipeo would have been blown to smithereens. But Lin Yi wouldn't have been able to avoid getting hurt as well. But the rules of the Ice Palace were very clear. No one was allowed to die. And so Lin Yi could only injure or cripple Naipeo, not kill him. Of course, Lin Yi wouldn't explain these things to Naipeo. It didn't matter if he understood or not. Lin Yi was planning on using the same method to deal with the other people in Naipeo's sect. It'd be a waste of time if he let them find a way to deal with it. With that, Naipeo stumbled up from the ground, not even bothering to pick up his backpack as he ran down the mountain. He was heavily injured, but his endurance was incredible, and no one tried to stop him. After all, Naipeo might be crippled, but going against him now was the same as going against the everyday sect. Lin Yi had injured Naipeo. What was going on? The spectators all looked at Lin Yi with awe and respect in their eyes. At this moment, they all hurriedly slipped away, planning to hide as far away as possible. Who knew if Lin Yi would come for their treasures as well? If Lin Yi were to really do it, they wouldn't dare fight back. Naipeo wasn't strong enough, so what right did they have to go against Lin Yi? Which one is Naipeo's? The snow Ganoderma Lin Yi turned to Niapeo and Niao Qiang as he asked faintly, Ling bro, no? Master Ling. Master Pao. Ugh. Pao's stuff is here, please accept it. Niapeo saw that Linny was looking at him, and quickly handed over Niapeo's backpack to Lin Yi, afraid that he'd die if Linny wasn't happy. You guys hand it in, as well, I don't need to do anything, right? Lin Yi asked as he took the backpack. Chapter 1509. Chapter 1508. Feng Miqian's pride, no need, of course not. This is supposed to be for you, Master Ling. Niapeo's face changed quickly, but he had no choice. If he didn't change his face now, wouldn't he be looking for death? He had already offended Lin Yi in order to kiss Niapeo's ass. And now was the time to change? Lin Yi took the things Zhuang Niapeo gave him and nodded. All right, you two can leave now. My hands are itching to see you two. I want to beat you up. Wah. Niapeo paused and quickly said, We'll disappear now. Absolutely fast. Faster than the speed of light. With that, Niapeo took Niao Qiang and ran away. Niapeo was now a cripple, and while they didn't know what Lin Yi did, they were sure that if Lin Yi did the same to them, they wouldn't have it easy. They sure run fast. Faster than a rabbit. Yang Qiqi looked at the two Zhuang brothers running away, like monkeys when the tree fell, feeling a little unhappy. Where was the arrogance they had when they tried to rob her? Now that they saw Lin Yi hurt Niapeo, they called Lin Yi Grandpa. What the hell was that? All right, take your Snolingji. Don't lose it again. Lin Yi said as he handed the herb back to Qiqi. Qiqi took the herb, a look of gratitude on her face. Thank you. Thank you. Lin Yi nodded. No need to thank me. You did help too. Lin Yi waved his hand. But I didn't help much. Qiqi was a little embarrassed. Her attack didn't do anything to Niapeo, and she saw it with her own eyes. I asked you to help me stall for time. All those plans before were just to stall for time. I never thought they would work. Lin Yi said, but if you feel bad about it, you can give it back to me. No. Qiqi quickly put the herb away. You've already promised me. Huh? Lin Yi smiled. We'll meet again. You've more or less got enough points, and even with Zhang Niapeo and the Zhuang brothers, we only have 500 points each. We need to get some more to pass. Can I go with you guys? Qiqi was really starting to get scared now. What if they got robbed again? She did not want to lose the Snolingji that she had finally regained after losing it with great difficulty. You? With us? Lin, he was slightly taken aback. Don't worry, I won't cause you any trouble, and I won't ask for your treasures. I just feel safer this way. Qiqi said quickly. Then let's go. Lin Yi had no reason to refuse, so he nodded. The news of Zhang Naipeo's defeat spread like wild. Many didn't see it with their own eyes, but they heard the news from the mouths of others. It was Ling Yi who crippled Zhang Naipeo. Such shocking news caught these people off guard. Zhang Naipeo was from an ancient sect, a master with ultimate skills. How did he lose? Wasn't this Ling Yi a little too strong? And so, these people changed from guarding against robbers, thieves, and Naipeo to guarding against robbers, thieves, and Ling Yi. Of course, this was just a joke. The person they were guarding against now was Feng Nitian. After all, Feng Nitian was doing the same thing as Zhang Naipeo. He brought Yushan with him to rob other people's treasures. Nitian bro, I heard that Ling Yi crippled Zhang Naipeo. What's going on? Why is he so strong? Yushan, naturally, heard the news as well. After all, Lin Yi and Yubing were on the same side. If Lin Yi was really that strong, then how was he supposed to deal with Yubing? Who knows? But don't worry about him. Even if he's strong, it doesn't matter. In front of me, he's nothing. Feng Nitian said, I can control anyone under Earth class. It doesn't matter if he's a spiritual practitioner or physical practitioner. He won't be able to escape from my domain. As long as he's in my domain, he won't be able to move. If he can't move, how can he attack? He can only get beaten up. Ha ha ha. That's right. That means that Nitian Bro is much stronger than Zhang Naipeo. Yushan calmed down after hearing that. At that time, Nitian would use his godly arts and freeze Lin Yi in place. What would Lin Yi do then? No matter how strong he was, he'd just die. You can't say that. We all have our strengths. Although he said that, Feng Nitian was still very prideful, because Yushan was right, someone Zhang Naipeo couldn't handle. Feng Nitian had absolute confidence. But that Zhang Naipeo really isn't as strong as Nitian Bro. He'll only get beaten up if he meets you. Nitian Bro, if we lock him in place, he won't be able to touch us, and we'll be able to do whatever we want, Yushan said respectfully. Feng Nitian smiled faintly, not saying anything. He'd heard that Naipeo's wasp absorption arts was a passive skill. It didn't matter if he was locked in place or not. But even so, Nitian did think that he was stronger than Naipeo. If they were to fight, even if he couldn't do anything to Naipeo, he could still shoot him with a firearm after he froze him. Wouldn't he still be able to kill him? He didn't believe that Naipeo could turn bullets into chi. At the highest point of the mountain stood two girls, one in green and one in white. It was Qing and the sect master of the Ice Palace. From where they stood, they could see the entire view of the ice snow spirit mountain. The vision and perception of a heaven rank expert was not something an ordinary cultivator could compare to. Without the help of any electronic equipment, they could clearly see everything that was happening on the ice snow spirit mountain. That Ling Yi. Interesting. The sect master commented faintly after seeing Ling Yi beat Naipeo. Yeah, I don't know what move he used to cripple Naipeo, Qing said, confused. Qing was a bit confused. But if an ancient sect's disciple is injured, won't they take it out on us? Would they dare? The sect master said calmly. For them, we changed the rules of the trial, not letting the participants kill each other. That's already giving them enough face. Now that he's alive, we've done our part. He dares to take his anger out on us? Even if the everyday sex elder were here, they'd only be on the same level as me. That's true. Qing nodded. We, the Ice Palace, have never been afraid of anyone. Chapter 15:10. Oh, doesn't that use up a lot of qi? Qing said with some surprise after hearing the sect master's words. In theory, it does use up a lot of qi. It's the same as using up your own strength to fight the enemy. The sect master paused, a little suspicious, but this person is a little special. Aunt Qing, didn't he say this before? All of his qi had been sucked out by Naipeo, and he was a complete cripple. But in one night, not only did he recover his strength, he even broke through. It seems like there are a lot of special people amongst the freelancers. Aunt Qing sighed. Too bad, he's a man. There's no way he'll be able to become a core member of the Ice Palace. The Ice Palace didn't accept men. And this was an unwritten rule that wasn't made public, but all the core members of the Ice Palace knew about it. The Ice Palace's inner sect was all women. If a man were to enter, there was only one possibility, and that was that the heir of the Ice Palace had appeared. In order to continue the Ice Palace's legacy, the heir needed to find a husband to continue the lineage, but in all these years, no heir had ever appeared, so there were no men in the inner sect. As for those male trial takers who fantasized about becoming an outer sect disciple of the Ice Palace, they would all be disappointed in the future. No matter how outstanding they were, they wouldn't be able to enter the core of the Ice Palace. Just like the owner, Li, he didn't just have a magical ability, he wasn't weak either. But after all these years, he was still a normal disciple guarding the door, never entering the inner sect. Our Ice Palace doesn't need outsiders. The Ice Palace mistress shook her head. Evidently, Lin Yi wasn't good enough for her. She was just curious, that was all. That's true. However, Palace Master, what do you think is going on with the lady that Ling Yi is carrying? Qing and the sect master were master and servant in name, but after the sect master Shurfa left, she was the one taking care of the sect master until she grew up. She was more like an Annie. So the two of them weren't too distant from each other. In front of the sect master, Qing wasn't too restrained, and the sect master even called her Aunt Qing because she had been calling him that since she was young, even after she grew up and officially became the palace master. She still called him that because of the sect master's strength. Even the grand elder had to treat her with respect. In the ancient sects, strength was everything, and the sect master's strength was there for all to see. No one could say anything about what she did, and no one dared. I'm not sure, but it looks like he's dying. I haven't checked yet. The sect master said, perhaps he's participating in the trial to get the right to trade for treasures to cure the friend he's carrying. Perhaps that's the case. Qing nodded. As the sect master and Qing talked about Lin Yi suddenly felt like he was being watched. It wasn't because Lin Yi sensed anything, but it was a natural sixth sense. Lin Yi closed his eyes and entered the jade space, using the jade space's senses to see who was watching him. The jade space didn't warn him, so that meant the person watching him didn't have any intentions of ambushing him. But to Lin Yi's disappointment, Lin Yi could only guess that the person watching him came from above the mountain, but he couldn't see who it was. Lin Yi raised his head subconsciously, looking at the peak of the mountain. That was where the ice palace was. Could it be that the ice palace's people were watching the participants' every move? That had to be it. With that thought in mind, Lin Yi didn't care anymore. After all, it was normal for the ice palace to be watching him. Qing paused when she saw Lin Yi look up. Did he notice us watching him? That shouldn't be possible. We are heaven class, and when we don't use our arts, low-level practitioners won't be able to sense our presence unless this person's sixth sense is naturally strong, or they've gone through some sort of professional training. The sect master shook her head. Perhaps the perception of loose cultivators is very strong. For them to be able to survive, they are naturally a bit more powerful than those who came from aristocratic families, said little Qing. But that young Chi-Chi is just SOSO. I wonder how a solo practitioner like her managed to survive until now. The sect master said with disdain. Because Chi-Chi was a girl, the sect master paid special attention to her, but the results were disappointing. Yeah, it seems like we need to make a rule for the next test that the participants must be female. Otherwise, almost all the participants from the noble houses will be male. Qing nodded. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Enemies, or people they didn't want to meet, just had to meet. This was the situation Lin Yi and Yu Bing were in right now. They followed Skybolt Pig to search for the next treasure, but along the way, they saw Nitian and Yushan together, robbing another team's treasure. If you don't want to be crippled, then hand over all your treasures. Yushan stood in front of the team members and said in a domineering manner, "You all know how powerful Brother Nitian is. If you dare to run or resist, I'll use my Nitian mystic art on you and cripple you." This team had just found a 300-year snow lotus, and beside it, there was a white bear guarding it. They had spent a lot of effort to defeat the white bear, and just as they were about to reap the fruit of victory, they bumped into Nitian and Yushan, and they came to steal it. They had naturally heard of Nitian's exploits, and so they didn't dare resist in front of him. They weren't Zhang Nai Peo, and they weren't Lin Yi. Chapter 15:11. You're smart. I won't cripple you guys. Hurry up and go. Yushan happily took the spoils of war and waved at the team. The team naturally didn't stay for long. Seeing that Yushan was letting them go, they left quickly, relieved. Ha, Nitian bro, you're so famous. Just stand here. You don't even need to say anything. You don't need to use any arts, and they'll just hand over the treasures obediently. Yu Shan's points had already broken through the 500 mark, and Ni Qian's had broken through the 800 mark. They'd been robbing and looting along the way, and they'd gotten quite a lot. That's good. It saves me the trouble of fighting. I'll save my strength to help you deal with Yu Bing. Nitian said proudly. I wonder where that short-lived bastard Yu Bing is hiding. Why haven't we seen him yet? He's not hiding from us, is he? Yu Shan was getting impatient. As long as Yu Bing was crippled, the head of House Yu would be his for sure. House Yu had the intention of letting Yu Ning take over, but Yu Shan knew that Yu Ning would become the guardian of House Yu sooner or later. House Yu still needed a head of the house, just like Yu Shaoqin right now. And so, this was the chance he was fighting for. This sentence was heard by Yu Bing, who'd just arrived, and he clenched his fists in anger. I'm a bastard. What are you? We're brothers. Are you a little bastard? Isn't this my beloved big brother? You're finally here to die. Don't you know how much I've missed you? Yu Shan turned around and saw Yu Bing. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Finally, he delivered himself to him. Miss me to death? You want me to die, don't you? Yu Bing said faintly. Hey, even if that's the case, we're brothers, so we have to be more reserved. Yu Shan laughed. I heard you found a really strong helper, and he even crippled Zhang Naipeo. Unfortunately, no matter how strong he is, he's just trash in front of Brother Nitian. You can't say that. He was able to defeat Zhang Naipeo. But because of my practitioner's arts, I'm invincible against anyone under the Earth class. Nitian waved his hand and said, acting like he was the king of the world, Yu Shan, you don't look like a loving person at all. Do you know that? I'm here to cripple you. Lin Yi said faintly, I'll make Yu Bing the head of House Yu. As for you, the stumbling block, I'll get rid of you now. Humph, Yu Shan sneered. Indeed, the ignorant are fearless. He was about to die, yet he still dared to say such shameless words. Don't you know that in front of Nitian Bro, you're nothing? If I'm nothing, then you're even more of a piece of trash. Lin Yi didn't say much as he slammed his palm towards Yu Shan. Yu Shan saw Lin Yi coming at him, but he didn't dodge or evade. His lips curled into a mocking smile. Nitian Bro, stop him. We'll play him to death slowly. But Yu Shan hadn't even finished his sentence when Lin Yi's palm slammed into his chest, sending him flying. His body flew in a parabola as he landed on the snow not far away, creating a huge crater. He spat out a mouthful of blood, mixed with bits of organs, his face pale as a sheet. I'm an idiot. Why didn't I dodge? My heaven-defying divine. Art needs time to charge up, Feng Nitian said, disappointed that Lin Yi didn't live up to his expectations. Suddenly, he formed a few weird hand seals in the air, and when Lin Yi turned around and slapped him again, he used his heaven-defying arts. In an instant, Lin Yi was frozen on the spot. He was still in the same position as before, but he couldn't move at all, and he couldn't even speak. Wah! Yu Shan didn't think that Ni Tian's art needed time to charge up. He thought that Nitian could control it as he pleased. Yu Shan felt a wave of sadness wash over him. Why was he so unlucky? He could have tortured Lin Yi and Yu Bing, but now he was heavily injured by Lin Yi. Now his meridians and organs were all damaged. Even if his meridians were healed by the meridian opening pill, his organs wouldn't be healed. Even if they were healed, his strength would drop drastically. Not to mention inheriting the position of the head of the house, he might not even be able to get enough elixirs like before. As a family, Yu Shan knew House Yu style too well. In House Yu, there was no such thing as familial love, only family benefits. The house wouldn't take special care of him, just because he was a descendant of House Yu. If he was crippled, the house might take care of him, but they wouldn't invest any more resources into him. Even if his father wanted to fight for it, his grandfather wouldn't allow it. Nitian Bro, why didn't you say so earlier? Yu Shan covered his sunken chest and said sadly, who knew that you'd be so dumb that you wouldn't even dodge someone's attack? You're a mystic mid-phase. Even if you're weaker than a mystic late phase, you shouldn't be unable to dodge even one move, right? You're just a piece of trash. I really regret listening to you and working with you. Nitian looked at Yushan coldly. In his eyes, Yushan no longer had any value to him. He was just a cripple now, and the conditions he promised him before were no longer going to be fulfilled. I'm sorry, Nitian bro, but please avenge me, Nitian bro. If Yubing becomes a cripple like me, then I'll still have a chance to recover my strength. At that time, my promise will still be valid. Yushan saw the disappointment in Nitian's eyes and quickly said, besides, he had calculated that out of the young men in House Yu, he and Yubing were the best. If Yubing were to be crippled as well, then he'd be on the same starting line as him. House, you couldn't just let two of the best of the young generation be crippled, and so they try their best to save them. At this point, he couldn't just care about one thing and lose sight of the other. He'd be saved as well, and so crippling Yubing was his last hope. Chapter 15:12. Since Yubing and Lin Yi were enemies, then he'd continue. Yushan was trash, but what he promised him before, Feng Nitian would still do it. This was the problem of an ancient noble house's promise. With this start, he believed that he would have many collaborators by his side in the future. Plus, after hearing Yushan's words, Feng Nitian didn't plan on letting Lin Yi. And Yubing, just like he said, if Yubing was crippled, he still had hope. Yushan, don't even think about it. Even if I'm crippled, I won't let you have it easy. Yubing said, that's not up to you. Yushan laughed, relieved after hearing that Feng Nitian wasn't planning on letting Lin Yi and Yubing go. Your teammates are locked by Nitian bro. If you take another step forward, you'll be locked as well. Yubing paused and raised his head to look at Lin Yi, only to realize that Lin Yi wasn't moving at all. At this moment, Lin Yi was still in the posture of a palm strike, as if he was about to attack, but he couldn't. Lin Yi was indeed locked by Feng Nitian's art. Right now, Lin Yi could think, he could see what was happening in front of him. He could hear each other's words, but he couldn't move his body. As expected, Lin Yi thought to himself. It was just like what Yubing described. His body seemed to be locked by something, and no matter what, he couldn't move at all. Lin Yi, I admit that you are strong, able to defeat Zhang Naipeo, but you will still lose in front of me. No one under Earth class can break through my domain. Your body won't be able to move. Nitian looked at the motionless Lin Yi, feeling a sense of accomplishment. He hadn't fought Naipeo before, but they were both disciples of the ancient level, and he still had the intention to compete with him. It was just that they couldn't really fight because of their statuses, but neither of them were willing to give in to the other. Both of them wanted to be stronger than the other, but now he could beat Lin Yi, and Lin Yi had injured Naipeo. This meant that he could beat Naipeo. How could he not be happy? Brother Nitian, I've finally found you. You are... Isn't this brotherling? Qikuan and Chijo weren't in the same team as Nitian, so they'd been looking for Nitian and Yushan the whole time. Now that they'd finally found Nitian, but something seemed to have happened. Master Kuan, it seems like they've started fighting. Chijo said softly. That's... Qikuan paused and hesitated, but he still retreated to the side. He had heard that Ling Yi had crippled Naipeo, and it shocked him greatly. He didn't think that Ling Yi would be this strong, able to defeat Naipeo from the ancient sect. This made Qikuan regret being with Yushan. If he didn't have Yushan, then wouldn't he, Ling Yi, and Nitian be invincible? But now, Qikuan saw that Lin Yi and Nitian were fighting, and after some hesitation, he decided not to help either side. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi and Nitian's chances were 50-50, and he didn't think that Nitian could win. What's going on? We all know each other, and we're friends. Qikuan pretended like, He didn't know what was going on. Chiquin, this has nothing to do with you. Just watch from the side. Yushan quickly said, afraid that Chiquin would come and mess things up. All right. Chiquin was just thinking that he didn't have a reason to watch from the sidelines, so he agreed to Yushan's words. What should we do? Chi-Chi couldn't help but ask Yubing as she looked at the motionless Lin Yi. I don't know, but let's not mess things up. With Lin Yi taking on Naipeo as a precedent, Yubing trusted Lin Yi. He wouldn't make a move if he wasn't confident. Oh, Chi-Chi frowned but didn't move. All right, I'll take care of you first, then I'll take care of you too. Nitian looked at Chi-Chi and Yubing as he spoke to Lin Yi. With that, Fong Nitian swung his fist at Lin Yi. He didn't use any skills at all. From his point of view, Lin Yi was no different from a dead man. He could only stand there and take his punches. Using any skills was pointless. He might as well just throw a punch. Boom. A loud explosion sounded, and Yubing and Chi-Chi closed their eyes. As far as they were concerned, Lin Yi was strong, but this time, there was nothing he could do. After all, Nitian was different from Zhang Naipeo. Nitian's arts were too special, and he could lock people in place and make them unable to move. This explosion was much louder than Naipeo's earlier explosion, and it could even be described as an earth-shattering sound. In an instant, all the snow around Lin Yi and Nitian was blown into the air, and the snow was flying all around them, making it impossible to see what was happening. Brother Nitian is really amazing. Not only is his Nitian divine skill heaven-defying, but even this ordinary move is also heaven-defying. Yushan looked at the sky full of snow and said respectfully. He felt much calmer now, knowing that Lin Yi wouldn't be able to survive this, and even if he did, he'd be on his last breath. Chiquin, on the other hand, had a shocked expression on his face as well. He didn't expect Nitian to be able to use such a strong move other than his arts. People from the ancient houses were indeed different. Lingy, Yubing called out subconsciously. His relationship with Lin Yi wasn't as simple as a temporary teammate. They were good friends, and even brother-in-law. He didn't want anything to happen to Lin Yi. The avalanche exploded with a strong aura, pushing Yubing, Chi-Chi, Chiquin, and Chijo back. They were all practitioners, and that was why they didn't fall to the ground. Chapter 15:13. Chi-Chi really wanted to apologize to Lin Yi, but there didn't seem to be a chance. At the peak of the snowy mountain, Qing and the sect master naturally saw everything that was going on. The snow made it hard for them to see what was going on. Aunt Qing, who do you think will win? The sect master asked faintly as she looked into the distance. Hard to say, but Fong Nitian has a higher chance of winning, right? Qing said, I didn't expect the other ancient sects and ancient families to be this trashy. Their two disciples who trained in ancient techniques are trash. The sect master frowned, a look of disappointment and disdain flashing in her eyes. Palace mistress, you mean first-class Ling won? Little Qing asked in astonishment. The winner is set. Fong Nitian's loss is set in stone. The sect master said, Ling, you won this round again. Just who is this guy? Is he really just a solo practitioner? Do you need me to look into it? Qing asked. No need, no matter how strong he is. It has nothing to do with us. The sect master waved her hand, telling Qing not to do that. The inner sect of the Ice Palace didn't accept male disciples or guest elders, so no matter how strong Lin was, it had nothing to do with the Ice Palace. Yubing clenched his fists, breathing heavily as he stared at the scene. He wanted to see through the layers of snow and see what was going on, but he didn't have X-ray vision. He couldn't see what was going on, and he didn't know if Lin Yi was dead or alive. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, had made up her mind. Lin Yi, we may not be friends, but you've helped me so many times. Yang Chi-Chi am not an ungrateful person. But if you die, then the grudge between us will be over. But I will avenge you. Lin Yi, Yang Qiqi, I won't let Nitian and Yushan go. I'm not their match yet, but I believe that one day I'll be able to. Qikuan and Qizhou, on the other hand, didn't dare get too close. They stood far away, watching the situation. Qikuan was a slick man, cunning and introverted. He was treading on thin ice in House Xiao, but he only had one goal: to become the head of the hidden house. In his eyes, there was no such thing as arrogance, nor did he care about face. As long as someone could help him, he could become his ally. Even if that person was once his enemy, it didn't matter. But now, Zhao Qikuan wasn't enemies with these two groups, so no matter who won, Zhao Qikuan would be able to maintain his relationship with them. The snow that filled the sky finally dissipated under the blowing of the strong wind. Gradually, the situation in the field could be seen clearly. However, to everyone's surprise, there wasn't a single person left standing. Lin Yi and Nitian were both on the ground, and the white snow had turned red as well. Blood was everywhere, but they couldn't tell whose blood it was. Ling Yi, Yubing called out nervously, "Nitian bro." The scene shocked Yushan as well. He didn't think that Nitian would be on the ground as well. How was this possible? Lin Yi couldn't move at all, and could only take the beating. How was Nitian injured? Finally, all the flying snow had dispersed, and everyone could finally see the specific situation in the field clearly. Yushan couldn't help but scream. He saw that Nitian's shirt was completely tattered, and his upper body was covered in blood. It was a horrifying sight, as if he had suffered a serious injury. On the other hand, Lin Yi didn't seem to be injured at all. Lin Yi was lying on the snow, and the only thing on his body was the unharmed woman. He didn't know how Lin Yi was, but from the surface, it seemed like Nitian was in a much more serious condition. The scene in front of him shocked Qikuan as well. As expected, the ancient noble houses weren't invincible, but with Zhang Naipeo as an example, it wasn't surprising that Nitian was injured. But Lin Yi, on the other hand, made Qikuan very wary. He didn't know how he was, but if he was fine, then Qikuan would pay any price to be friends with him. This was very important for him to become the head of House Xiao in the future. Just when everyone was in shock, the two people in the field moved at the same time, but to everyone's surprise, the first one to get up wasn't Lin Yi, but Nitian. Could it be that Lin Yi's injuries were more serious than Nitian's? Yu Bing and Yang Qiqi, who saw that Xiao Xiao was fine, let out a sigh of relief. Now, they couldn't help but get nervous again. Xiao Xiao looked fine, but Lin Yi was on the ground, and no one knew what was going on with him. Could it be that he was heavily injured? Or was he already? These people were right. Lin Yi's injuries were much more serious than Nitian's. But the severity of the injuries had nothing to do with the effects of the injuries. Although Nitian moved first, that only meant that he had enough qi in his body to support it. And Lin Yi's injuries were more serious because he had no qi left in his body. Right now, his meridians were all broken, and he was in the jade space, using every second to heal himself. This was the same as last time when he fought with Ma Zhu. There was no qi left in Lin Yi's body, and his meridians were broken as well. There was no way for him to recover his strength, and all he could do was slowly heal the wounds on his body. But if he wanted to heal his meridians, it was impossible without external help. The reason for this was because Lin Yi had used 2 qi bombs in a row today. The first time was on Naipeo, and although he didn't compress all of his qi, only half of it was used up, and Lin Yi didn't have time to enter the jade space to recover. And under that situation, Lin Yi couldn't enter the jade space to compress his qi again. It wasn't practical. Chapter 1514. However, the moment the bomb exploded, Lin Yi was afraid that the explosion would hurt Xiao Xiao on his back, so he used the last bit of qi he had left to protect her, and that was why this happened. Once again, Lin Yi became a cripple with all his meridians broken, but this time, Lin Yi wasn't worried at all because Lin Yi had thought of this outcome before using the energy bomb, and he had made preparations in advance. General Weiwu wasn't here, but the second disciple of General Weiwu, Skybull Pig, was beside him, and inside the pig's body, Lin Yi had injected a lot of pure energy, and it could be used by Lin Yi as well. So, as long as he killed Nitian and settled down, Lin Yi could use Skybull Pig to recover his strength. With the previous lesson, Lin Yi wouldn't do something reckless like that again. Especially this time, his life and Xiao Xiao's safety were closely linked. Lin Yi had to plan before he acted. He couldn't take any risks. Lin Yi had to recover from his injuries first, at least stand up, and look like he wasn't injured at all. That was the only way he could scare off those people. As for his strength, he could recover slowly, and he believed that after he crippled Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nitian, no one would dare to provoke him anymore. As long as Lin Yi looked fine, no one would dare to touch Lin Yi. And so, Lin Yi didn't care about Feng Nitian at all. He could touch him if he wanted to. In Lin Yi's eyes, Feng Nitian was already a cripple, and no matter what he did, it wouldn't affect Lin Yi at all. Feng Nitian, on the other hand, climbed up from the snow with difficulty, but he looked very pitiful right now. He wasn't standing up, he was kneeling on the snow. His legs were obviously seriously injured, and he couldn't even stand up. It was just like what Lin Yi had said before, to let him stand and go back in a wheelchair. Impossible. This is impossible. Ni Qian's face paled. He couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. He wanted to rub his eyes, wanting to see more clearly, but he was shocked to find that his arms were already gone. Where was his arm? Why was his arm gone? At this point, the others could clearly see Ni Qian's face. His right arm was completely gone, and his left arm was missing half of it. As for where the missing limbs had gone, no one had discovered it. Perhaps it had already exploded into pieces. Brother Nitian, what's wrong? Yu Shan looked at Nitian in disbelief, as if he wanted to say that this wasn't real, but Nitian really was crippled. It wasn't as simple as losing his arms and legs. He didn't even have an arm. Under such circumstances, even if he recovered, he would be a cripple, unable to cultivate anymore. My arm. This is impossible. This isn't possible. This isn't real. Nitian seemed to have gone crazy as he mumbled to himself. He couldn't accept this cruel reality. The heaven-defying godly technique that he cultivated relied on using his hands to form hand seals. Now that he had lost both his hands and even one of his arms, that heaven-defying godly technique could no longer be used. How could he accept this? He was the pride of the younger generation of House Feng, the strongest competitor for the position of the head of the house. But now, everything was gone. Without the advantage of the art, Nitian was nothing. He had lost his arm, and his legs were broken. His body was heavily injured as well, and it seemed like his meridians were mostly broken as well. This made Nitian a cripple, and even the ancient House Feng wouldn't be able to turn this around. Damaged meridians could be repaired with the meridian opening pill, but a lost arm was gone, and there was no way it could grow back. He had never heard of anyone regrowing a lost arm. Lin Yi. Yu Bing saw that Nitian was standing up, but Lin Yi wasn't moving at all. He was starting to panic. Nitian looked terrible, but at least he was still alive. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was lying on the ground, not moving at all. How could he not be worried? Qing, on the top of the snowy mountain, was confused as well. Sect Master, that Ling Yi, is he done? I don't know. Perhaps he used all his qi to protect the girl behind him. The Sect Master frowned. Then he really is an infatuated man. Qing sighed. Does that mean that he lost in the end? It's hard to say. I feel like something's not right. The Sect Master shook her head. This Ling, doesn't seem like an impulsive person. Perhaps he's not dead yet. I hope so. Otherwise, if Ling Yi really is dead, then it'd be troublesome. Qing said. Nitian broke the rules of the test and killed someone, but he was heavily injured as well. We can't punish him, but we can't not punish him either. We really don't know what to do. We won't go that far. The ancient House Feng wouldn't go against us for a crippled person. The sect master wasn't worried about that. As they were talking, Lin Yi suddenly moved. What was different from Nitian was that Lin Yi jumped up, not struggling to get up from the ground. Lin Yi's clothes were tattered as well, but Lin Yi looked refreshed, as if he wasn't injured at all. Lin Yi, thank goodness. Yu Bing looked at Lin Yi and calmed down. He cheered excitedly. You really are strong. You didn't disappoint me. Ha. Lin Yi smiled faintly, feeling a little helpless inside. He knew himself the best. That leap he'd made just now had taken a long time to gather his strength. In fact, his body was still very weak right now. His organs and meridians were all heavily injured, and Lin Yi only used the art of dragon mastery to heal the surface of his body. From the outside, it looked like he wasn't injured at all, but that wasn't the case. Chapter 15:15. But now, it was too late for regrets. In an instant, the ancient sects and noble houses had fallen from their pedestals in Yushan's heart, from the high and mighty existences that he could only look up to. Now he felt that Lin Yi was the one that he could only look up to. In front of him, the disciples of the ancient sects and noble houses were nothing. You're fine? You're fine? Nitian looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. His face was filled with disbelief and unwillingness. If Lin Yi was dead or heavily injured, then Nitian would feel better. But Lin Yi was perfectly fine right now. How could he accept this? I'm fine. I'm fine. Lin Yi nodded with a smile. Impossible. Impossible. I clearly used a heaven-defying divine art to freeze you in place. So how can you still make a move against me? How is this possible? This is impossible. Nitian looked at Lin Yi, trying to find a reason for his failure. You're a mystic class master. How could my arts not work on you? It worked. Who said it didn't work? I was frozen before. Didn't you see? Lin Yi shook his head and said, What? If I was frozen, how could you attack me? Nitian asked, Who told you that you can't attack when you're frozen? Lin Yi smiled coldly. Wah? Nitian paused. How can I attack when I'm frozen? I did, didn't I? Lin Yi said. Did your arts tell you that you can't attack when you're frozen? Or did your elders tell you that you can't attack when you're frozen? But Nitian thought to himself. Indeed, they didn't tell him that he couldn't attack when he was frozen, but how could he attack when he was frozen? He couldn't think of an answer, and all that was left was shock. Lin Yi didn't explain anymore, because there was no need to explain anything. What was there to say to a cripple? So Lin Yi said to Yu Bing, Give me their treasures, we can leave. Lin Yi urgently needed to find a quiet place to recuperate. He had been forcing himself to leave this place as soon as possible. All right. Yu Bing nodded and walked up, taking all of Yushan's belongings, including the one Nitian left with Yushan. Yu Bing, you killed your brother. I'll explain it to Grandpa. Just you wait. House Yu's punishment is waiting for you. Yushan gritted his teeth as he watched Yu Bing take away all of his treasures. He screamed with all of his strength, unwilling to give up. Slaughter, I was the one who hit you. Did you get the wrong person? Lin Yi looked at Yushan and said faintly, When you go back, you can tell House Yu to come find me any time. Yu Bing knows who I am. Let's go. With that, Lin Yi turned around and walked away, not looking at Nitian and Yushan anymore. Yushan reacted abruptly. Yes, it was Ling Yi who hurt him. It had nothing to do with Yu Bing. Yu Bing had been standing there the whole time, not even moving a finger. even if he wanted to blame it on him. It was impossible. With that thought, Yushan was a little annoyed. He was thinking about how to make it sound like Yu Bing colluded with Ling Yi to hurt him, so that Grandpa could punish him. If he couldn't become the head of the house, then Yu Bing wouldn't be able to get any benefits. At the peak of the snow mountain, the sect master's face was still expressionless, as if she had already predicted this. She ordered Aunt Qing, send the two cripples back. Nitian and Yushan were different from Naipeo. Naipeo's meridians were broken, but he could still move, so the Ice Palace didn't need to send him back. But now that Nitian and Yushan couldn't even walk, the Ice Palace could only send them back to their houses. Yes, little Qing nodded and went to arrange for a disciple to receive them. Qikun looked at Nitian and Yushan, then at Lin Yi. He had a plan in mind, but in order to not offend the ancient house Feng, he pretended to be regretful. Hey, what's going on? How did they get into a fight? Nitian bro, Ling bro, you guys. Sigh. It's really hard to be a follower. This has nothing to do with you. Nitian was hurt, but he didn't want to lose the prestige of an ancient house. He held back his sadness as he spoke. As they spoke, two disciples in white appeared, ignoring Lin Yi, and the others as they walked towards Nitian and Yushan. Nitian, Yushan, you two are injured and can no longer participate in the test. Elder Qing has ordered us to send you two back. With that, the two didn't wait for Nitian and Yushan's response. They each picked them up and flew down the mountain. The Ice Palace's quick response, it was beyond Lin Yi's expectations. Now, it seemed like he was right. The Ice Palace's people had been monitoring the participants' movements. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known about Nitian and Yushan's injuries so quickly. Ling bro, you're really something. I've said it before. Brother, you're not someone to be trifled with. It seems like I'm right. I'm impressed. Chikun's way of addressing him had changed from I to follower. It was obvious that he was trying to suck up to Lin Yi. I'm all right. Lin Yi said faintly, Brother Chikun, I've got some internal injuries, and I need to find a place to heal. We'll meet again. Lin Yi didn't hide the fact that he was injured. If he wasn't injured at all, it would be weird. It was normal for him to be injured, but Lin Yi didn't tell them the extent of his injuries. He only said that he was slightly injured, but on the surface, it didn't look like he had any serious internal injuries. Ah, I see. That's perfect. I'll protect you, Chikun said as he patted his chest. As for ambushing Lin Yi, he didn't even think about it. As far as he was concerned, even if Lin Yi was injured, he was still much stronger than him. Even the disciples of the ancient sects and noble houses weren't a match for him. So who the hell was he? All Chikun was thinking about was how to get close to Lin Yi. This way, he'd have a super strong ally, and it would be very important for him to fight for the position of the head of the house. Chapter 15:16. Although the hidden families weren't as powerful as the ancient sects or ancient families, the aristocratic Family Arbitration Association wasn't just for show. The aristocratic Family Arbitration Association wasn't inferior to an ancient sect. If an ancient sect really wanted to make a move against the hidden families, then the aristocratic Family Arbitration Association would definitely send out a heaven-rank summon to have the hidden families and ordinary sects unite to resist the ancient sect or ancient family. Moreover, one of the founders of the aristocratic Family Arbitration Association had a deep relationship with the older generation of the ancient sects and ancient aristocratic families. Although these people were no longer around, and no one knew where they went, their relationship still existed. Therefore, the ancient world would not easily interfere with the matters of the secular world and the hidden world. Nitian was gone, and Chikun breathed out in relief. This way, he could interact with Lin Yi without fear, and so he suggested protecting Lin Yi to get on Lin Yi's good side. Lin Yi sighed and nodded. All right, let's find a quiet place. And you guys protect me? No problem. Leave it to me. Don't worry, brotherling, just focus on healing. I won't let anyone disturb you. Not even a mosquito. Chikuan patted his chest with a promise. He changed the way he addressed Lin Yi from brotherling to brotherling. It was just one word, but the meaning was completely different, yet it didn't seem out of place. This was where Zhao Chikuan's intelligence came from. Lin Yi smiled faintly and didn't say anything. He could tell that Chikuan wasn't that popular in House Zhao, or else he wouldn't be in such a rush to get allies. And so Lin Yi didn't have to worry about him being on the same side as Qibing. Cousin Yubing, please take care of me in the future as well. Chikuan smiled as he greeted Yubing. I'm just trying to make a living with you. Brotherling Yubing didn't say anything more. After all, Lin Yi had already accepted Chikuan, and Yubing didn't have to be petty and chase him away. Plus, the two were related. Of course, Chikuan quickly nodded. Just like what you said, Cousin Yubing, we're all with Bro Ling now. Whatever conflicts we had before, we can forget about it. We're his lackeys. We can't fight amongst ourselves. Yubing found it funny. This guy used to have a good relationship with Yushan, but now that Yushan was crippled and Feng Nitian was crippled, he saw that Linny was strong, and now he ran over to bow down to him. To be honest, Yubing looked down on people like this, but as long as you were strong enough, you could make people like him be your lackey. Are you all right? Then why didn't you wake up earlier? You're so scary. Chi humphed. She wouldn't admit that she was worried about Lin Yi. Haha. When Lin Yi was healing in the jade space, he was lying on the ground, but he could still sense the outside world. He saw Chi-Chi's expression clearly and heard what she said as well. But at this point, Lin Yi couldn't be bothered with this girl anymore. The crowd had long since dispersed. In their eyes, Lin Yi was already a legend. First, he crippled Zhang Naipeo, and then he crippled Feng Nitian. With this kind of strength and methods, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him the number 1 under Earth class. Before, in the eyes of these mystics, Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nitian were already the number 1 in the mystic class. But now, they knew that Lin Yi was even stronger than them. This shocked them. And naturally, they didn't dare to get too close to Lin Yi. Who knew if he was like Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nitian, someone who liked to steal other people's treasures? Even if he didn't steal, if he wanted the same treasure as him, then there was no need for conflict. It was better to stay as far away from him as possible. Lin Yi found a quiet place to hide from the wind and took off Xiao Xiao. He laid her flat on the snow while Lin Yi sat cross-legged. He waved at Skybolt Pig. Come here. Skybolt Pig didn't know why Lin Yi was looking for him. He thought that Lin Yi was going to give him chi again. He was very happy and jumped onto Lin Yi. This little thing is an ancient spirit beast? That's fun. Is it a pet? Chikuan didn't know what Skybolt Pig was used for, but he looked left and right. He didn't think that it had any attacking abilities. Perhaps it was just a pet. And Yubing replied faintly, not explaining much. He wasn't familiar with Chikuan right now, so naturally he couldn't tell him everything. Yang Chi-Chi, on the other hand, always maintained a cold attitude towards people she didn't know. Her face was cool, as if she didn't see Chikuan at all. But Chikuan wasn't annoyed. Who knew what relationship this cool girl had with Lin Yi? If the two really did have some sort of relationship, it wouldn't be nice if he offended her. Now that she was ignoring him, he didn't mind, as long as she didn't reject him. Skybolt Pig was excited to receive the pure energy from Lin Yi, but in the next moment, he realized that not only did Lin Yi's pure energy not give him a single bit, but it was also flowing into Lin Yi's body at an incredible speed. Oink, oink. Skybolt Pig jumped. Could it be that Lin Yi had learned Zhang Naipeo's wasp absorption arts? Otherwise, how could he absorb other people's chi? Don't be noisy. I'll help you recover later. Lin Yi comforted the pig. Oink, oink. Skybalt Pig calmed down after hearing Lin Yi's words. After spending so much time with Lin Yi, he had a general understanding of Lin Yi's personality. Whatever Lin Yi said, he would do it, so he wasn't worried that Lin Yi would lie to him. Fortunately, he had prepared beforehand, turning Skybalt Pig into General Wei Wu's second disciple. Otherwise, with his meridians damaged, there was nothing he could do. He couldn't go back to General Wei Wu, could he? What about Feng Xiaoxiao? Skybalt Pig's energy flowed into Lin Yi's body, healing his meridians quickly. This made Lin Yi sigh in relief. As long as his meridians were healed, the rest would be easy. Recovering his strength was only a matter of time. Qi and Qi Jiu didn't know how Lin Yi was healing, but they stood 1 meter away from Lin Yi, coldly observing the surroundings, afraid that something would disturb Lin Yi. Yu Bing and Qi, on the other hand, were also wary of Qi and Qi Jiu. They knew that these two wouldn't dare do anything, but it was always better to be careful. Chapter 15-17. As a result, Qi and the others thought that Lin Yi had been healing for a long time. They were all practitioners, and they knew that it was normal for a small injury to take a day and a night to heal. Only Yu Bing and Qi looked at each other, seeing the worry in each other's eyes. They knew of Lin Yi's insane healing methods. Qi's injuries were so severe, and Lin Yi healed her in no time at all. But now, Lin Yi had used the entire afternoon, and he still hadn't finished healing. How bad was Lin Yi's injuries? But, as worried as they were, they didn't say anything. They couldn't let anyone else know about this, especially Qi and the others. It's night, you guys must be sleepy. Rest first, I'll take care of things here, Qi said to Qi and Yu Bing. It's nothing, we're all practitioners. It's fine, even if we don't sleep. The qi here is thick, too, and it's good for training. Yu Bing said, I think we should keep watch at night while training. Sounds good. Qi didn't object and nodded. In the latter half of the night, Lin Yi had recovered his strength, but he didn't break through again. Perhaps it was because he had just broken through, but this time he was only at mystic late phase. But if other people knew that Lin Yi was regretful even after recovering, they'd probably vomit blood. For example, Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nitian, they were 100 times worse than Lin Yi right now. Full. Lin Yi stood up and let out a long breath. In an instant, his strength as a mystic late phase was on full display. Yu Bing and Qi, on the other hand, weren't sleeping. They were sitting on the ground, training while waiting for Lin Yi to recover. When Lin Yi stood up, everyone came back to their senses. Qi and Qi Jiu were fine, but Yu Bing and Qi quickly stood up, a look of joy on their faces. It seemed like Lin Yi had recovered. Ling Yi, you've recovered? Yu Bing asked happily. Yeah, I'm fine, it's nothing, just a small injury. Lin Yi understood what Yu Bing meant, but because Qi was here, he acted like he didn't care. That's good. Yu Bing understood Lin Yi's meaning immediately. I saw Nitian's injuries before, so I was wondering if you were injured as well. But since you recovered so quickly, it's just a small injury. Of course, Brother Ling is the strongest under Earth class. How could he be injured? Qi said respectfully. In the Mystic class, I don't think there's anyone who can fight Brother Ling anymore. Even an Earth class would have the strength to fight him. All right, let's all rest. Thank you for protecting me. It's my turn now. You guys can rest in peace. Lin Yi didn't mind Qi words at all. Lin Yi wasn't someone who liked being flattered. He knew his own strength, and whether or not he could fight in Earth class wasn't something that could be said with words. Ling Yi, aren't you going to rest? Yu Bing asked curiously, but then he remembered that Lin Yi had been training instead of sleeping. That's fine, we won't hold back then. Sleep well. We still need to continue searching for treasures tomorrow. Qi was sleepy as well after hearing what Lin Yi said. He didn't hold back. All right. Thanks for the trouble, Brother Ling. We'll sleep for a bit. as far as Chiquan was concerned. With Lin Yi here, no one would be stupid enough to come looking for trouble. Wasn't that the same as suicide? Did they think they were stronger than Zhang Naipeo or Feng Nitian? Of course, unless Lin Yi wanted to do something to him. But if Lin Yi really wanted to do something to him, it didn't matter if he slept or not. Chiquan didn't think he was stronger than Zhang Naipeo or Feng Nitian. If Lin Yi wanted to do something, he could kill him right now. There was no need to wait for him to sleep. And so Chiquan just fell to the ground and slept, not caring about the danger. Seeing how relaxed Chiquan was, Yu Bing shook his head and smiled. This guy was quite something, much stronger than his blood-related cousin. But who was the head of House Xiao? Yu Bing couldn't say anything. That was House Xiao's business. Yu Bing and his cousin weren't that close, and it didn't mean that Yu Bing would get any benefits if his cousin became the head of House Xiao. They were relatives, but when it came to the family's benefits, benefits came first. Not to mention, even a relative like Yushan would become an enemy for the sake of profit. And so, it wasn't that Yu Bing couldn't accept being in a relationship with Chiquan, but he felt that this guy's personality wasn't very good. The everyday sex base. Naipeo had already rushed back to his sect, and after driving to the nearest airport, he took a plane back to his sect city. His stamina right now wasn't enough for a long journey, but this way, it was a lot faster. Senior brother Naipeo, why are you here? Didn't you participate in the test? The disciple guarding the gate saw Naipeo and asked curiously. Yeah. Naipeo was panicking. He wanted to see his teacher, but he didn't have the time to talk to the disciple. His heart was in a mess, and he didn't know how he should face his teacher. He was the pride of the everyday sect, a disciple that even the elder of the sect valued, but in the test, his meridians were all severed, and he became a cripple. How would he have the face to see these people who placed their hopes on him? The disciple frowned as he watched Naipeo leave, cursing in his heart. Fuck, he's acting like he's some bullshit. Isn't he just a dead eunuch? I'll castrate myself. Of course I'll be stronger than you, but I'm not an idiot, and I know that I don't have the potential to reach Sky Class, so I'll wait until I reach Mystic. Then I'll pass away and become a bodyguard in the common world, enjoying life as a bodyguard for a school beauty or something. Of course, he didn't know that Naipeo was already crippled. If he did, he probably wouldn't be calling him Senior Brother Naipeo anymore. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.